Good morning. I feel like a teacher. Good morning, class. Welcome to the Bureau's final advisory group meeting of calendar year 2016. My name is Patrick DeRay. I'm Chief of the Bureau of Automotive Repair, and we have a fairly busy agenda today. I want to first welcome all of our advisory group members who are able to attend today, the audience, of course, and those listening in at home. The meeting is being webcast, so pay attention to making sure your mics are on when you want to ask a question. And obviously, people coming in from or coming up to the podium to have comments or questions, we'll make sure that the mics are live so that those listening in at home can hear your comments and questions. If those listening in at home or work through the webcast want to send a comment or question, certainly we want to encourage their participation. barmeeting@dca.gov. Again, that's barmeeting, B-A-R meeting, all one word, at dca.ca.gov. All right. I always like to open this up with just going around the dais here with the advisory group members introducing themselves. And we do have a new member from AmeriMap, correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
My name's Denny Bowen. I'm with AmeriMap. That's Automotive Maintenance and Repair Association, AmeriMap. Okay.
Morning, John Gallo, California Automotive Business Coalition.
Good morning, it's George Ritz from California Automotive Teachers.
Jonathan Morrison, Auto Advisory Services.
Jack Molodonov here on behalf of the California Auto Body Association.
Jason Bartonen, Inter-Industry Conference on Auto Collision Repair.
Tracy Renee, the Automotive Service Councils of California.
We have, thank you all. We have, before I go any further too, I always want to introduce my executive office staff. Doug Bellotti, Assistant Chief. Dennis Hayes, Deputy Chief for Smoke Check Operations. Sabina Knight, Deputy Chief of Admin. And I'm trying to think. Oh, Dan Povey. He's out today. Has a family matter that he's tending to. But he's our Deputy Chief for Field Operations and Enforcement. And I wanted to say, Dan's not here today, but he has also just recently said that he will be retiring at the end of the year. So it's with difficulty that I have to make the announcement that we'll be looking shortly for a replacement to fill that position, and hopefully before he actually departs on December 30th or 31st, whatever his last day is, we'll hope to have someone on board so that there can be a smooth transition, a seamless transition between Dan and his replacement. We're very happy that of all the service that Dan's provided and given and knowledge that he's shared with us and wisdom over the years, starting out as a program representative in one of our Bay Area field offices. And he has risen up to the executive office level when I appointed him as Deputy Chief of Field Operations and Enforcement a few years back after being named Chief of the Bureau back in 2013. So a lot of sadness in the announcement that, he hasn't necessarily made publicly. I think he's one of the types that would rather just kind of ride off into the sunset quietly. And I know he has mixed reactions and emotions about it. Probably doesn't want to put a lot of spotlight on our attention on that, the fact that he is retiring, but we'll try and throw him a good party before the end of the year, despite his efforts to probably try and thwart our efforts to do so. But if you get a chance over the next 3 months to meet with Dan or just reach out to him to thank him for the work that he's done, I'm sure we'd all agree with you and appreciate that, and I know he would, so thank you. Yeah. And Dan, we know you're not listening at home, but hopefully hopefully someone will pass on our congratulations to you. Thank you, buddy, for everything you've done to help me in my job and the rest of the Bureau succeed over the many 28 years I think he's been in public service with the Bureau of Automotive Repair. All right, moving right along, we have Adam is going to make the presentation from the Department of Consumer Affairs. Adam is was with and still is with the legislative office, but recently promoted to deputy director, and we're very happy about that. And congratulate you on your promotion. Thank you, Adam, for being here.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Adam Quinones. I'm the Deputy Director for Legislation at the Department of Consumer Affairs. Going to give a brief DCA update on some of the activities that have been going on since the last advisory committee meeting. Just very quickly, as far as staffing goes at the department, we have a new Assistant Chief Counsel. You want me to? New Assistant Chief Counsel, Ryan Marcroft. He is replacing Tamara Colson, who has moved on to the Bureau of Medical Cannabis Regulation. So she's going to be having a lot of fun there, developing regs around cannabis. Not as much fun as we have here. I'm actually going to skip over legislation because I know that there's going to be an update later, except to say that it was a very busy year for bar and bar issues. And I want to thank Chief DeRay and all of the bar staff. My office is responsible for representing all of the bureaus to the legislature, working any bills that affect any of our bureaus. And it's always great when you have bureau staff who are, number one, extremely responsive at all hours of crazy hours that I request things and need expertise and guidance. And bar staff is always just phenomenal. And two, that understand that legislation is not just policy, but also politics. And, Chief DeRay and staff always understand that and get that nuance. And so I just want to say thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to work with the entire bar crew. So thank you for that. And I look forward to not talking about tow trucks or oil changes next year. Yeah, fingers crossed. So there was my next update is the Little Hoover Commission recently released a report titled Jobs for Californians, Strategies to Ease Occupational Licensing Barriers. This report really focuses on some of the barriers that are created by licensing. This is based on in reaction to a White House study that was done earlier this year that kind of highlights that licensing can oftentimes create barriers for certain groups, ex-offenders, veterans, certain minority groups. And so this Little Hoover study that was recently completed looks at some of the department's licensing criteria and offers a number of recommendations about how the department can ease some of the barriers that are created by this licensing. We're currently, still reviewing the recommendations, developing some responses to them. A number are directly aimed at the department, and some are aimed at the legislature. So I suspect that there will be a number of bills, pieces of legislation next year surrounding this report. So I'm sure we'll be providing more information at the next meeting. An IT update. I'm going to read this as written by our CIO. I'm not going to stray because I'm not an IT person. The department is currently developing a plan for the boards and bureaus that were previously in Release 3 of BREEZE. The path forward will include business process planning, during which existing business processes will be mapped and potentially re-engineered. It uses case development and solution requirements will be defined. The Department of Technology's four-stage project approval lifecycle will facilitate business analysis, justification, alternatives, and cost-benefit analysis, solution development framework, and project approval. The final step will be implementation, possibly following an agile or agile hybrid development methodology. Please don't ask me what that means. Just giving the update. Additionally, the department's Office of Information Services is working with Caltech to migrate email services to an Office 365 model. This I actually do know a little bit about. The current platform will be retired in October of 2017, and the new model includes some enhanced features like instant messaging, where you can instant message people in your office through Outlook. I think it's a really good tool for communicating a bit quicker and not having to do a whole email and everything. We'll also get some video conferencing ability, which will be really helpful. Unlimited file storage in our Outlook. All a bunch of IT stuff. So any questions, please direct them elsewhere, because I don't know much more than I just told you. And then lastly, I just want to talk about some DCA organizational planning training things. We have our solid unit has developed this brown bag meeting for executive officers and bureau chiefs. It is sort of an opportunity for all the executive officers and bureau chiefs to get together and discuss various issues, bounce ideas off each other, share some best practices regarding a whole host of issues. The last one that was held on September 28th was about safe workplaces, building work philosophy, and had a peer panel. And also, there was an update about our future leadership development program that's going to be coming soon. So these have been really well received, and I'm sure, Pat, you've been attending those. We will have additional brown bag gatherings scheduled in the future. That's all I have. Any questions for me?
Just a quick question, Adam. On the Little Hoover Commission report, about when do you think that'll be published for us publicly?
The report was published last week. It was released online. It's on the Little Hoover website.
Okay.
It's a pretty lengthy report. We had a number of meetings with Little Hoover staff, provided them quite a bit of data and information about how we license, what are the criteria, what do we look at when somebody, checks the box to say that they have a previous felony. So we've been working with them quite a bit over the last few months to give them a lot of information, and then they went forward and developed their recommendations based on that, based on interactions with the legislature. So,
Thank you.
Anybody else? Charlie Peters with the Clean Air Performance Professionals.
Yes, hello, I'm Charlie Peters, Clean Air Performance Professionals. I don't believe I've ever had the pleasure of meeting this gentleman, but he stepped up into a place that we've been very interested in, and actually got some pretty interesting attention from within the past 30 days. And specifically, we went up to talk about the issue of warranty and requesting additional support for the Chief of the Bureau of Automotive Repair to have the ability to orchestrate policies that can improve how the consumer is being treated and being able to get warranty services that the law requires in California. In the meeting that we had the pleasure of having at DCA headquarters was two subjects that I still have not seen any movement on, which are a flag situation where a vehicle is shopping around, attends one place and fails, goes to a second place, and there is a flag that comes up that notifies the technician that this car has failed someplace else before he does anything to proceed into the test. The original proposal that we made was that this should be after all the entries, before the certificate is issued, providing flexibility to the technician to go ahead and certify it, to giving him lots of flexibility. Currently, what happens, in our opinion, is that keeps him out of harm's way and keeps him from being audited when his activities are not appropriate, and takes a significant audit process of the Bureau of Automotive Repair away from them if they were doing it as it was planned initially. Second item was that in doing a smog check, there's a label under the hood, and this label indicates, like engine families and that kind of information, that we think is critically important for the technician to be aware of. That gives him information whether or not the car is covered under warranty, which our perceptions have been over time starting to improve some, but that the number of people who are even aware of the primary warranties that exist, which is primarily the PZEV warranty, which is a 15-year, 150,000-mile warranty, that's been perceived to primarily be a parts warranty, when in fact it's a performance warranty. And that's a very significant factor in seeing to it that cars that should be failed or actually end up, what's wrong with them, getting repaired. And when people in the marketplace, it's new car dealer and every place that we've quizzed on this subject, don't even seem to be aware of it, requiring the technician to view that information on the label and enter something into the smog machine about that could very significantly improve the education and effectiveness of that program. So I still will petition the director and his staff to give support to Pat and to the Bureau of Automotive Repair to what I perceive can be a huge improvement in how that system works by addressing the issue of the flag and the information off of the emissions label. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. We had a very good meeting. Yes, we did, with the director and chief deputy director and the deputy director for public affairs on these issues. Thank you, Charlie, for being persistent and getting some time with the director. I was included in that meeting. Bud Rice, I thought I saw Bud. Bud? Yeah, geez. You were there? Good. One of the end results of the meeting, I know there's still some outstanding issues and concerns, and we'll continue to have dialogue and see where we go on it, but one of the things that we did do as a result of that meeting is, and have included in you both in the draft of a revised vehicle inspection report that consumers will get when their vehicles fail an inspection on the OBD inspection system. Very detailed information about warranties, specifically some information about PZEV warranties and the extended warranties there. And thank you for looking over the initial draft. I think we're going to look to go to print, if we haven't done so this week, probably starting next week, to have that information, this new information on the vehicle inspection reports for all failing vehicles. So we'll send out, I think we'll send out a copy to everybody that's on the advisory group, and that way you can see it without having to wait to see it come up on your a machine at a shop or something like that. Thank you very much, Adam Quinones. As always, we really appreciate the work that you do on behalf of the Bureau, especially this year. We had a lot of legislation going through that affected this industry, this Bureau, consumers. Alex McElraith, who is our legislative analyst in the department, working with Adam, very closely working with him on these bills and our regulations as well. So thank you very much to the both of you for all the support and work for the Bureau this year and always. Any other comments, questions before we move on? Okay. Oh, before we go any further, I should, you've seen the announcement, presumably on the second page of the agenda, and then we have a separate announcement about 2 regulatory workshops that will occur this afternoon in this same room, also being webcast. We're going to have 2 proposed regulations that we're going to discuss on an update to the Bar 97 specification, and also a workshop on changes to update and modernize the lamp and brake handbooks and the inspection requirements. I'm not sure which one's first. Can someone remind me?
Bar 97.
Bar 97 is first at 2 o'clock, 2 to 3 o'clock in this room, and then 3 to 4 is the lamp and brake handbooks. Thank you. All right. Our next speaker and presenter is Nina Tantrapol with the Bureau's regulations. There's not necessarily an office, but she is our regulations coordinator in the Bar Program Support Unit, giving us, I'm sure, a very thorough and involved discussion on the legislation that got to the governor's desk, all those bills that were enrolled. I think everything else, safe to say, died in committee if they didn't get to the governor's desk, obviously, and may see them in one form or another next year. But we're just going to give an update on those bills that got to the governor's desk. And also regulations that we're currently working on, one of which was just approved by OAL. I'll let you do the update. Thank you.
There we go. Got it. Okay, so I'll start with just kind of going down the list. We've included some additional ones for this meeting that may interest the automotive repair industry. So so some that you haven't seen before. AB 873 we know very well. It was signed September 30th by the governor. However, AB 873 and SB 778 were each contingent upon the enactment of the other. And because SB 778 was vetoed, this bill also will not be enacted. It would have provided for installation of propulsive batteries, not being a minor service. Would have required BAR to adopt regulations defining minor services by a certain time, by January 1, 2018, after which the current list of exempted services would have been removed from 9880.1, and it would also have exempted roadside services, including tow trucks and motor clubs, and would have also have and would have excluded them from the definition of repair. So. All right, so AB 1174, also vetoed by the governor on September 22nd. This is a bill that would have required BAR to adopt regulations on its complaint handling procedures, not including undercover investigations, and to post the regulations on the website to track and retain data on BAR's complaint mediation results, the kinds of restitution and remedies sought, and the number of complaints, types of complaint, that kind of data. And also to report annually to the legislature. So this bill was vetoed. The governor cited it in his veto message that it was unnecessary and duplicative to adopt these sorts of regulations. All right, so AB 2153, we've included this at Jack Molodanoff's request. This is the Lead Acid Battery Recycling Act. This creates a whole new scheme for lead acid battery recycling. It establishes fees on lead acid batteries to fund the cleanup of contamination caused by lead acid battery recycling facilities, actually, lead contamination. So among other things, dealers who sell lead acid batteries will have to collect a refundable deposit on the sale of a new battery. I think it would work similarly as to a core charge. They would have to post a written notice stating that they're required by law to accept used lead batteries and charge a fee on all the replacement batteries sold. They would be charged a non-refundable $1 fee on each lead acid battery sold to someone who's buying a replacement battery. And the dealer could retain a 1.5% fee as reimbursement for the costs associated with the fee collection. Manufacturers would pay a $1 fee for a period of 5 years for each lead acid battery sold at retail. After that time, the consumer fee will increase to $2. Okay, AB 2167, Achadjian. This was signed by the governor and chaptered September 23rd. So this basically was the cleanup of AB 1222. it allows truck drivers to provide alternative forms of identification besides their driver's license, and allows businesses who accept these tow trucks from the tow drivers more flexibility in documenting their identification. For example, if they refuse, or if they, or under other circumstances, I suppose. So during business hours, businesses are generally required, when they take possession of a vehicle, to document the vehicle make, model, and license plate or VIN, the date and time of the drop-off, and the identification of the tow truck company and driver. If they're a new car dealer and the tow truck operator refuses to provide their identification, then the dealer can instead document their reasonable efforts. Outside of business hours, you document the same information, but businesses can generally make a reasonable effort just to contact the tow truck company and obtain the driver's ID. Okay, so AB 2387, this has to do with airbags. So there is an existing law governing the safety of airbags. This bill was signed and chaptered on September 27th. So it strengthens the existing laws aimed at deterring fraudulent distribution and installation of airbags, and it came about in response to the rash of the recalls of Takata airbags and the concerns over the concerns that these bags were being replaced with counterfeit airbags. So it strengthens that law by defining key terms. It includes a definition for counterfeit airbags, as well as for non-functional airbags, and they're broadening that to include airbags that have been detected to have an electrical fault by the vehicle's diagnostic system. So it also applies the law to manufacturers and importers, so it kind of extends further up the supply chain. Okay, so SB 778, oil changes. This was vetoed by the governor on September 30th, and again, this was contingent upon the enactment of AB 873. So this would have been quite a significant change for the Bureau. It would have created a new registration type for automotive maintenance providers, and it would have included provisions from AB 873 define minor services, but also it would have provided that the services provided by AMPs are minor services. It included the requirement of certain disclosures during oil change transactions, and also would have allowed BAR to purchase undercover vehicles not subject to certain DGS restrictions. In the governor's veto message, he noted that before a new business registration program is enacted, there would be a more comprehensive review needed. And he pointed to AB 873 as providing that process. Okay, SB 1046, ignition interlock devices. This bill was signed by the governor on September 28th. So existing law already provides that a person convicted of first-time DUI can apply for a restricted license, while repeat DUI offenders can get a license reinstated earlier by agreeing to install an ignition interlock device and enroll in a required program. In both circumstances, you would pay fees. So what this bill provides is that beginning July 1st, 2019, all DUI offenders will be able to install an ignition interlock device for a specified period of time in order to have their license reinstated. So they can kind of just, it does away with the license suspension period and allows you to continue driving just by installing this device. So installers of these devices have to make sure to provide for any drivers coming in to get this device installed a copy of Vehicle Code Section 23575.3, Subdivision K, along with the telephone number of either BAR or Berhefty, wherever they're registered. And what this section sets forth is the income-based fee schedule by which costs of the device are shared between the driver and the manufacturer. It's like a sliding scale depending on whether you're, 200% within 200% of the poverty line up to like about 300% of the poverty line. So installers have to verify the person's income by looking at either their federal tax return from the last year, the 3 months of income statements, or their unemployment benefits. One thing also to note is that this bill authorizes BAR to impose a civil fine of up to $1,000 on a manufacturer or a manufacturer's agent that is certified to provide these devices if they fail to provide or comply with this vehicle code section. Okay, so on to regulations. Oh,
Can we open it up for any comments or
Oh,
questions
sure.
related to legislation? It's a lot of material to digest, and before we get any further into the presentation on regulations, and it seemed like a natural break in the presentation to be able to open it up for any comments or questions.
Yeah, just some
Jack.
comments, questions. So the legislation you went through it quickly, but it was pretty significant this year. No, it was fine. Thank you for doing that. I'm just wondering, because of the veto messages, and the veto message in 778, and it was tied to 873, the Jones bill, which had been vetoed before, prior Jones, and there was a Galgiani bill for the BER to be able to do regulations to look at what are minor repairs and what are repairs that require oversight. Is there anything the BER is considering in terms of legislation? I know the DCA folks were here and talked about that. Is there anything you can share with us today in terms of the industry, what the next steps may be? Because I know these issues are pretty significant, and I know there are a lot of concerns out there in the industry as what direction we're going. So is there anything that can be shared here today with us?
No. Next question. Just kidding.
I'm glad how you hesitated.
I always wanted to do that to you, but I finally got a chance. Okay. No, of course we will. Nothing legislatively at this point, but I think we kind of want to look at the ability to push the envelope or test out our ability to develop some regulations with this advisory group, obviously being very intricately involved in that process, and any other of the stakeholders in the audience or elsewhere who were very interested in the legislation, particularly the AB 873 and SB 778, and obviously the Galgiani bills in prior years, and other iterations of the AB 873 bill in particular. I think the governor gave very clear instructions both last year with last year in the last session with AB 1665, and then obviously this year with AB 873 and SB 778 that want a more involved or more comprehensive review of the matter. I think there's some things that we can do regulatorily speaking, also with respect to SB 778, looking at the disclosures to consumers. I think that kind of falls into the kinds of things that we require on estimates and invoices, and might fall under some kind of area that would along those lines, maybe along the lines of a trade standard as well. I don't know exactly, but we're going to push the envelope on it. I think there's an opportunity to look at maybe doing this through regulation, because I think everybody who's been working so hard on all of this over the last few years and more, Mike in particular, I know you've been diligently working on this. It's been a very frustrating process. I'm presuming for all of you to have worked so hard and then see come up just short of maybe what your expectations were in trying to get something legislatively accomplished. But I think there's some things that I'd like to look at with everybody who wants to be involved in that process to do so. And we'll start that process soon. I don't necessarily want to wait for the first bill to drop before we're kind of playing catch up. I'd rather get in front of that train and kind of address the issues that have been clearly laid out in the governor's veto messages, and the authors, for that matter, who have introduced these bills. Does that help? Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else? The first order of business, for that matter, is I'm looking to bring on a regulations expert, someone to bring on very quickly. I'll be announcing that position. It'll work in the front office at BAR, and it'll be a limited term position solely dedicated to this purpose or this cause. I hope to have that position filled by if all goes well, November, early December. And we'll just start hitting the ground running or that person will right when they get on board. Okay? All right, thank you. Continue.
All right, so we're going to move into the regulations. All right. So the windshield, as Pat mentioned, has been approved by OAL, approved on Monday. It will take effect January 1st, 2017. So tomorrow, a notice will be sent out or just an email announcement will be sent out to the interested parties list. And there will also be the documents, the text of the new regulation, and the final statement of reasons will be posted on the Bureau's website, the Laws and Regulations page. If you go to the Laws and Regulations page and then click on Regulatory Actions, you can find the final statement of reasons. So if you've made a public comment, you'll be able to find a response in that document. Okay, so mobile ARD advertising. So this one is moving along, and it's under final review at the Department of Consumer Affairs. We hope to have this one. This one should be filed with the OAL by the end of November, which means we would be looking at adoption by early next year. All right, so electronic documents and authorizations. We know this one very well. We've had 3 workshops on it in the past year or two. And so we're, doing some very important things here to allow for electronic authorization of and transmission and storage of estimates and invoices. And we are also just restructuring the provisions of this Article 7 dealing with the disclosures by automotive repair dealers to make everything a lot clearer, kind of streamlining things. So this will be in a formal review this week, and the next step would be review by agency, which would hopefully, the DCA formal review process for regulations typically, at least the ones that I've seen, takes about 6 to 8 months. So hopefully by mid next year we'll be at agency. And then after that, of course, is the public comment period.
The only thing I'll interject here is that we've done a lot of work with the legal office to kind of go over these regulations so that when they do get them for a formal review, that hopefully speeds up that process.
Yes, that's true.
We've involved them in a lot of the discussions and drafting of the regulations, if you will.
Okay. So the cleanup of the STAR program, I know this is interests many of you. This is definitely a much needed cleanup to remove outdated Gold Shield program provisions, updating the eligibility criteria for the program, and revising language concerning the suspension process. So we had a workshop on this back in July. It's currently in the informal review process, and it should be in formal review hopefully by the end of the year. So this is so the update of the BAR 97 specifications. So here we're making some critical updates to modernize BAR 97 equipment. For example, moving the dedicated phone line requirement, which is a big thing in terms of moving things to be internet-based, requiring that the low oh God, I don't even, I'll just say left pen, I think you understand, to communicate directly with the Bar 97. This is the low-pressure fuel evaporative tester, and that will be now communicating directly with the Bar 97 smog check inspection equipment, and providing some updating of the minimum hardware and software standards. Again, just updating this to be just on board with just modern technology. We're going to have a public workshop on that today from 2 to 3, as Pat mentioned, and I encourage you all to attend. It's going to involve some really important changes to the smog check inspection procedures and equipment. So, but we will be pushing this to go into formal review very shortly after, and by the end of this month, actually. And because, as Pat mentioned, similarly to the electronic reg, we've involved legal with, it's already undergone some review by legal, and so we're hoping that that will kind of push this further along. Okay, so the brake and lamp handbooks. So here we're doing, again, a lot of modernization of the handbooks for licensed brake and lamp adjusters and stations. You'll get to view the latest version of the handbooks at the workshop today from 3 to 4. And I, again, encourage you all to check that out as well. Okay, sorry. I also wanted to mention that for this one, the next step will be informal review at Department of Consumer Affairs hopefully by end of November. Yeah. Okay, so this is a regulation concerning the Bureau of Certified Schools and Instructors. We're updating the requirements for certification of the training providers to be consistent with current licensing requirements. This one has been around for a while. As many of you know, we had it on hold earlier pending adoption of the disciplinary guidelines. And now that the disciplinary guidelines have been adopted, we will be moving forward with this, although this package will make some kind of cleanup changes, though, some minor cleanup changes to the disciplinary guidelines as well. So this is going to resume the formal review process at the Department of Consumer Affairs and hopefully be reviewed by agency in a few months. Okay, so finally here we have the Repair Assistance Program eligibility requirements. BAR is developing a regulation to modify those requirements to broaden the participation to allow more consumers to receive this financial benefit. So this is currently still being developed by program staff, and so I anticipate informal review probably next year, I would say in several months. So, are there any questions at all?
Jack.
Thank you, Nina. On the windshield replacement
Yeah.
regulation that's taken effect January 1st of 2017, that's significant because, especially in the auto body field, because the regulations now require shops to at least provide information on the estimate and invoices with cure time. So in terms of this is rolling out on the 1st, has there been talk about, the educational period, reaching out to folks, because anytime you get a new law, you want to make sure that the industry is aware of it, and so they're complying, so you don't have any issues out there with the field operators or representatives taking action and that sort of thing. So what is the sort of the plan, or at least in terms of the rollout and the educational process to the industry? I know associations like the Auto Body Association will provide information to its obviously members of the new laws, but sometimes getting it out there takes some time. So is there any information on that in terms of the rollout?
Absolutely. I think even though it takes effect January 1, there's an educational push that the Bureau needs to, and to undertake with the industry. We'll be reaching out to the various stakeholders. If the Auto Body Association has any upcoming events, anything you can think of, and anybody else I invite to ask the Bureau to come out and speak on this particular regulation, that would be something we would definitely welcome, and we'll get the right folks out there to do that. Yeah, it's gonna be an education on this new change with the cure time, or otherwise known as the drive-away time, and the information that needs to be provided on the estimate, and that kind of thing. So, yeah, absolutely. We want to make sure that everybody's up to speed before we go out enforcing the provision on January 1. And it would be an enforcement through an educational tactic initially. I don't know when the time would be when we'd start moving away from that, but some kind of assessment that, enough time has passed and everybody should be up to speed on how to address this regulation or implement this regulation. But, yeah, I'll talk with Dan and the team, the enforcement team, and we'll look at how to kind of get ourselves out there through public speaking events and opportunities that you guys might have to invite us to. We'll be meeting with our field offices too, to make sure that the message gets out there about that kind of proactive education. Yeah, John.
Yeah, wanted to follow up on the comments you made, Pat, regarding all the work that was done on Senate Bill 778, maybe 873, and the opportunity to create maybe a workshop or an opportunity to work with the Bureau on a regulation, given how much back and forth we had with the authors this year, everything that was in play, whether it's the maintenance license provision that was added to the bill. And so I think many of us would be interested, with all the work that went into the bills this year, to participate and help with the Bureau on this.
We'll definitely let you know when we throw the first party on this. We're gonna sit down initially after I get the person on board in the next 4 to 6 weeks, hopefully, and then start mapping out a plan to kind of work everybody into that process, and then come up with a draft, hopefully, fairly soon into the new year. It may be a very preliminary draft, but at least shows a conscientious effort to kind of move this thing along. Okay. Anybody else? Anybody on the webcast? You're not on the webcast, Dave. Come on up.
Hi, Davey Bald, H Mobile Services, and I know this mobile advertising regulation has drug on and on, but there's been an aspect that's come up recently about these online brokers, like Your Mechanic, for example. From what I understand, they have their own ARD number as a company. And so when they subcontract to these mobile mechanics, the mobile mechanics are working under their ARD number. And the concern I have is these mobile mechanics, they may contract with this online broker service, but they also will do a lot of their own work that they've generated through their own efforts. Is there anything been discussed about how to prevent these independent contractors from using the online broker's ARD number? Sort of, obviously it's fraudulently, but there's kind of a gray area there. Has there been any aspect to address that issue?
We've struggled with how much authority we have in this area. Can you explain it a little bit better for me? You said, I know that Your Mechanic is out there. They have a registration. We've actually handled they've actually had consumer complaints that we've had to handle and have mediated through them, and actually very satisfactorily, to my knowledge. But can you tell me a little bit more about the relationship?
Well, basically, from my perspective, because I'm out there doing this, and the number of registered mobile mechanics with an ARD license, the percentage is probably very minimal. I noticed in the statistics for this quarter, there's 965 registered mobile ARDs in the state. And I'm sure there's probably tenfold of people just running around in some form or fashion trying to run a mobile repair business. And so if they contract with, for example, your mechanic, they are now they're acting as a subcontractor and working under your mechanic's
Right.
ARD number. So, but they're still doing other work that they've generated through their own efforts, independent of the online broker. So is there any way to stop them from using the online broker's ARD number?
Okay, that's the piece I wanted to, yes, that's where the Bureau needs to step in. I thought you were concerned about the actual sublet, which is, obviously happens with brick and mortar operations. You sublet to a muffler shop, it's not registered with the Bureau, but the ARD who took on the job and sublet it is responsible for that work, just as though that ARD did the work. So same thing goes with the sublet situation, presumably within the brokerage situation that you're talking about with the ARD being this outfit that you've mentioned.
Right.
But the fact that they're doing additional work above and beyond that, and using the ARD's registration number,
Yes.
yeah, that's not good. That's,
Right.
yeah, that seems that's outside of even current law. So that's, if you have examples of that, I'm sure my guys who I saw walk in the room would definitely be interested in hearing about specific cases where that, if you want to
Okay.
point us in the right direction.
All right. That was the only question I had.
That was a good one. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
Charlie Peters. Oh, sorry, Trace, I missed you. I'll get back to you.
Charlie Peters, Clean Air Performance Professionals. I found that last comment there very interesting, in that we seem to utilize and request one person turning in another, when in my view, that should be the responsibility of the Bureau of Automotive Repair through an auditing process to ferret out that kind of activity and to request that it gets changed. So just having one person in the marketplace turn in somebody else in the marketplace tends to be a situation that is self-serving and helps that person's position in the marketplace when the Bureau is responding to that kind of situation, tends to be a destructive force that doesn't tend to create the appropriate outcomes. I think that should be incorporated in the Bureau of Automotive Repair's management of the program and auditing the program and deciphering that kind of activity and asking for it to cease and desist or taking appropriate actions to get that to happen, that should be initiated by the Bureau rather than requested as an input. Because here I am, if I'm a provider in the marketplace and I don't like all the people's activities around me, I turn them in and get the Bureau of Automotive Repair to take action against them, and I think that I end up being the winner here, when in fact we create a dysfunction rather than an appropriate outcome of improving the performance in the marketplace.
All right, I never said we were going to take an action against them. I was hoping to maybe just have a talk with them, but okay. Yeah, I would think we'd want to...
Whatever the appropriate action is appropriate, but if that's just coming from competitors in the marketplace versus an action by the Bureau of Automotive Repair to ferret out this information and try to improve its performance in the marketplace, I think the Bureau can do a huge improvement in performance where that what you're suggesting is likely just to be destructive rather than constructive and been used as an anti-competitive basis.
Okay, fair enough. The only thing I would say in response to that is you don't know what you don't know. And if there's something going on out there that we don't know about, point us in the right direction. We'll go check it out. All right, Tracy.
Tracy Renee, Automotive Service Councils of California. I just want to go back to the mobile advertising. And I think there's a few issues and I really think that needs more discussion. But, you know, for instance, it's a sublet. The sublet rules are outdated, need to be relooked at. But a definition of an automotive technician is either the ARD themselves or an employee of an ARD. So, you know, with the internet platform companies that keep sprouting up, there's many of them, so I'm not going to pick on anybody. You know, it's in every industry. It's not just our industry. We're kind of, you know, everything's going to a 1099, and you know, there's finding loopholes everywhere to move these systems forward. I just think that, you know, our industry is very concerned about these internet platform companies as far as just a, you know, loophole of sublet services and some other issues. So I would like to see more discussion and possibly, you know, on a future agenda item or something like that, maybe discuss, you know, sublet, the definition of a sublet in our industry for an ARD. And anyway, I could go on and on, but I wanted to.
I would entertain that. I mean,
Thank you.
if you feel that
like
there's
you
they're outdated, something that we should look at. We've gotten similar comments about other parts of our regulations, air conditioning standard, or the regulations on air conditioning service standards. You know, those were developed many years ago now. Seems like just a short time ago. But yeah, in the area of sublet, if there's something the industry is interested in looking at or having the Bureau look at and working with us on, yeah, by all means. We do have a pretty busy agenda, you can see, for the next year, regulatorily speaking, but we can start the process and start looking at it. And when we clear the deck with some of these reg package, we can start looking at maybe some other new ones that can follow behind them.
And also, you know, that is a really important concern, and sort of echoes some of the comments that we received on the mobile ARD regulation. One of the things that we would also have to look at is our statutory authority to regulate those licensees or those technicians, because currently I don't think we have, you know, well, we would have to kind of take another look at it, but in terms of our authority to regulate those technicians that you're talking about, that's something that we would have to look at, because that's sort of a major issue. We may need to, you know.
I don't see it as, I mean, the way it's set up with the internet platform companies, these technicians are independent contractors, so therefore they're their own business people. So that would be just, you know, we have a business, they have a business, so it would go more under a ARD is the way I would look at it. I don't really, that's why I think it's a sublet issue. I mean, that's the loophole that's being used. In my opinion, I know some might not like to hear that, but it's you know, if you're not an employee, you're not an employee. You know, if you're an independent business person, you're an independent business person. So, you know, as far as using that as sublet services, you know, that's an actual, you know, technician going here, going there, going over here. You know, that's not subletting to a business, like sending it out to the exhaust shop, sending it to the tire shop or something like that, the body shop. So I think those things need to be looked at. And there's a lot of reasons beyond just the automotive repair that I personally feel is very important.
But I think you hit on a key distinction, and I'm not sure who, as much as the Bureau and others probably want us to make us a jack of all trades, and, there may be some issues that kind of cross over into maybe EDD or Board of Equalization. I don't know exactly who monitors that kind of employer-employee,
Right, that's separate.
independent contractor relationship. But one of the things that you did that caught my attention was the difference being a business versus an individual that may not even be registered with the state as a business entity. So that's a good distinction there in my mind. But something to look at, and how to maybe moving forward look at some regulations that if that's the consensus of this group and others that want to put Bureau in the mix in the middle of it, and that's what we'd kind of have to look at. You're right, with the sublet issue, if there are loopholes there. Again, I'm not trying to say anything about the online folks who are doing this. They've got a business model that seems to work for consumers, but obviously there's some competitive issues that we have to look at as well.
Exactly. I on the
And
record,
fairness,
I do not.
fairness issues, I think.
Right. I do not want to pick on any company. That's not what this is about. I think it is a competitive marketplace. Issues, but thank you, Pat.
All right. As I said, not opposed to looking into the issue some more and working with all the stakeholders who have an interest in this issue. All right. Thank you, Nina. I think that pretty much does it for this meeting. Good presentation. Very thorough. All right. Clay Leak with our Technology Services branch is going to give his standing update on the California Vehicle Inspection System Transition Project, or CalVista. Some important developments in the last week or so. But fairly transparent, too, for everybody else other than the Bureau, I guess, and the department.
Thanks, Pat. My name is Clay Leak with the Technology Services branch. And as Pat mentioned, I'll just give you a quick status of where we're at with the project. Real quickly, in summary, our high-level goals are to negotiate ownership of the California Vehicle Inspection System, which supports pretty much all that is smog check. In parallel, refresh the system to a state-owned data center to align with laws. And in parallel with all this, to publish an RFP and obtain competitively bid maintenance and operation services moving forward. So I don't know that this slide's changed too much from the last meeting. I was hoping to have a little bit more of a dramatic update for you, but we'll probably have to wait till the next meeting to get there. So currently, we have completed contract negotiations with our current vendor. We are in the contract review and approval process. We have obtained some contract resources to help us with the development of the RFP, so we're not kind of waiting around for this contract to get executed. And finally, we are working to take advantage of any early start opportunity we can to kind of keep the ball rolling and keep momentum. Next steps. We are hoping very soon to complete the contract review and approval process. As I mentioned, we are continuing development of the RFP. Very shortly, we will actually obtain independent verification and validation, contract resources, and a test lead resource as well. Those RFOs, I think, hit the street today, actually, so those resources should be coming on board very soon. As I mentioned, continue to look for early start opportunities that we can get going on. Execute the contract and kind of dive in to the work of actually moving the system to OTEC. Our baseline timeline, we have kind of officially slipped a little bit. I would define our slippage in terms of weeks, not months at this point. Have a little bit better picture of exactly what the impact to the schedule is once the contract's actually executed. So, in terms of dependencies, we've talked a little bit about the bar 97 dial-up to IP, and obviously there's a workshop today on that. We continue to have quality of service issues that are impacting stations out there, so we are pushing forward as quickly as we can to get those machines moved over to the internet to alleviate a lot of that pain. And we've actually published a communication specification, and we've been working with the Bar 97 manufacturers to get that process moving forward. So hope to have a test environment established soon and actually start testing some of that communication from Bar 97 to our system over the internet. And that's about all I have. Any questions?
Well, I wanted to just touch upon the thing that I kind of alluded to, and actually I said it was fairly transparent. What I really meant to say is want to make it more transparent. It's kind of an obscure development that happened in the last week or so with the approval from Ms. Voss's office and also the director's office of the document to justify the extension of the contract with the current vendor so that we can do all the work to allow us to move forward with it. That will be done in time for us to release an RFP next year. I didn't say that very eloquently, but maybe you can kind of touch upon that a little bit more.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting process getting this contract reviewed and approved, a bit like a game of chutes and ladders, I guess is how I would describe it. But we've certainly hit a few really good ladders over the last month, and we've gotten a lot of support from our oversight, State Technology Procurement Division, and the department as well. Several documents that need to kind of go through the process. It's not just the contract package, and we've got a lot of progress getting the NCB through, which is the justification for a non-competitive bid. We have received approval from the department, so that document's on to agency for approval, and then the contract package, we're making really good progress with that as well. So I'm real pleased with the progress. It's disappointing we're a little bit behind, but I think we've got some real good momentum. So.
And those were all necessary steps as outlined in the feasibility study report for this project to move forward before we released an RFP for ongoing maintenance and operation of the system.
Absolutely.
All right, any questions? Tracy.
Tracy Renee, Automotive Service Councils of California. Okay, on the first here, negotiate ownership of the system. I was just wondering what companies are you negotiating with as far as the ownership of the system? Who's?
Yeah, so currently BAR owns the data, the schema kind of associated with the system. BAR doesn't own the hardware configurations. When we kind of looked at that, it was going to be difficult to transition to a competitive bidding process. So one of the goals of this NCB was to take ownership of the system. So, the future transition is more administrative and less technical in nature. So the details of that are certainly laid out in our feasibility study report and have kind of always been really one of the fundamental goals of the project, yeah.
No, and I understand that. I'm just wondering, are you in negotiations with any?
Oh, our current vendor, SGS Testcom, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
That's why I was just wondering who that was.
Correct.
And then the other, this might be going over this afternoon in the workshop, but on the Bar 97, which companies, which manufacturers of the Bar 97 are going to discontinue their service contracts as of the beginning of the year?
I don't have the answer to that question. The equipment certification's a little bit out of my realm of expertise.
Probably a better question for the workshop if you're able to attend or.
I'm not going to be here.
Okay. Paul's in the room, I think. Is he
Yeah,
not?
if we
Yes.
could just, oh.
Paul, we can talk to Paul. Paul, I'm not sure if you're prepared to answer, or did you hear the question?
All right, Paul.
For those who can't make it to the workshop? Paul Hedgeland with the Bar Engineering and Research Group.
So the question was, which Bar 97 manufacturers are no longer supporting equipment?
Servicing, yeah, their service contract
Servicing
is supporting the
equipment.
equipment, correct.
The only manufacturer I'm aware of at this point is Opus not servicing their first and second generation equipment. So all four of our currently certified vendors are certified or servicing the platforms that were certified 10, 15 years ago.
Okay, I just, that question was brought to me and I went on and I couldn't find any other information I knew about Opus because I actually have that equipment. So thank you.
And moving forward with the update to the Bar 97 specification, I don't think we have with any degree of certainty of who's going to stay in the program. Is that correct? I mean,
Since we've not started the formal certification process for equipment meeting the new 2017 specification, we're not sure exactly which of the 4 vendors are going to participate. I mean, a couple have shown more interest than others, but we haven't actually started that yet, so I can't say who's in or out at this point.
Any other questions for either Clay or Paul related to this issue? Audience? Webcast? All right, thank you very much, both of you. Oh, Paul, you're up again. Yep. Well, shoot, how timely. All right, Paul Hedgeland, now to give us an update on, not update, a presentation on OBD criteria, readiness monitors, and those issues.
All right, good morning. I've got some information for you about the OBD test portion of the smog check inspection. So last year, obviously, we made use of the Bar OIS inspection system mandatory for all stations, star stations, and other stations wishing to inspect the newer model year vehicles, 2000 and newer vehicles with OBD2 under 14,000 gross vehicle weight, and all the diesel-powered vehicles subject to smog check. Later, after that, in May of last year, we reduced the number of allowed incomplete OBD readiness monitors. And the readiness monitor is the self-test that the vehicle performs to diagnose its emission control systems as reported by the vehicle's computer. So we changed those standards, and I'll review those here in a moment. And then just this year, we added another standard, which is data validation. So what that means is we're expecting a certain minimum set of data from a vehicle now. And I'll explain that in more detail. So to review the standards for OBD readiness monitors, the old standard for gasoline vehicles was any 2 allowed incomplete for 96 to 2000 model year vehicles. And the new standard, starting last year, was any 1 allowed incomplete for 96 to 99 model year vehicles. Obviously, these are all inspected on the Bar 97 equipment now. The old standard for the newer gasoline vehicles, 2001 model year and newer, used to be any 1 allowed incomplete, is now only the evaporative monitor allowed incomplete. And these vehicles are inspected on the Bar OS equipment. And then a reminder on the bottom of the slide here is just vehicles over 14,000 gross vehicle weight that are 2000 newer model year, gasoline. The inspectors will see a prompt on the OIS software saying a certificate cannot be issued, which is a reminder to use the Bar 97 equipment on these vehicles. Okay, so moving on to the diesel OBD monitors. The old standard, light gasoline, was any 2 allowed for the early model years. The new standard for 98 to 2006 model year vehicles is 0 incomplete, meaning all the monitors have to be ready. These have simple OBD systems. They only have a few monitors, which is a reason we felt safe going to this level. The old standard for the newer diesels was any 1, similar to the gasoline. And the new standard for diesels are any 2 allowed incomplete on the 2007 and newer. So 2007 model year, you'll notice the technology changes quite a bit. More sophisticated OBD, lots of exhaust after treatment functions on the vehicle. We're still studying that data on those with Air Resources Board and may at some point in the future go to an exhaust after treatment only set of monitors, which is what our regulation gives us the authority to do. But right now, any 2 incomplete. And then again, a reminder on the bottom to use the Bar OS equipment for every diesel. Okay, so OIS data validation. This is what we did this year. It was kind of new. Starting August 7th, the Bar OS required vehicles to communicate basic OBD data appropriate to that vehicle. So if a vehicle's OBD2, it must support certain OBD readiness monitors. This can become an issue if a certification type is entered incorrectly on a federal vehicle, because California vehicles have more robust OBD system than diesel vehicles. The inspector would get an invalid data received from the vehicle message, and it would cause the inspection to fail for invalid data. Excuse me. So the invalid data occurs because the OS is expecting a greater number of supported monitors from a California vehicle when in fact the federal vehicle doesn't support that data. So all 98 and newer California certified diesel trucks subject to smog check are OBD2 compliant and have greater monitor support than federals. And the federals 98 through 2006 over 8,500 gross vehicle weight are not OBD2 compliant. So they have little or no monitor support. So as a result of the difference, it's critical to put in the appropriate certification type on these vehicles especially. If the certification type's entered correctly and you get an invalid data, simply follow the screen prompts and retry communication. Cycle the vehicle's engine off and try again. If you enter the wrong certification type, abort the test, put in the correct certification type, try it again. You may also get, on a rare occasion, an invalid data message if only the vehicle's transmission computer responds instead of the main engine computer. In that scenario, again, cycle the key and try again, and those usually communicate. How to identify certification type? I know this is kind of difficult. There's not a standard to the labels from what we can tell. We really rely on the technician and inspector's expertise in this area. But here's an example of a federal vehicle. This is a diesel engine. The labels are on the engine typically and not on the vehicle body. And you're looking for words like federal or EPA. And then in contrast, the California certified emissions vehicle has California on the label. This one has California and OBD2 in this case. That's what they're looking for. All right, so enough about standards. So going back to the monitor readiness change last year, we did some analysis before we made that change to the fewer number of monitors allowed incomplete for passing vehicle. We identified a few vehicles that had a higher than average expected rate of failing at that new standard. And some of these vehicles even failed at their first inspection, meaning it was probably not a deterioration issue, it might have been a design issue from the vehicle, from the manufacturer. So to study these vehicles, we sent out a bar blast to industry saying, hey, if you get one of these, send it to the referee, and the referee will entertain and recruit the motorist to a repair study so we can find out what's going on with them. So if only that one issue existed, for example, only an EGR readiness monitor on a particular vehicle, it couldn't have any other faults, so we want to narrow it down to that particular issue. The referee recruited the motorist, and if they were willing, they'd pay a diagnostic and a limited repair at a dealer. The dealer then repaired or attempted to repair the vehicle, and we even asked they consult their factory engineering guidance if they were stuck. And those invoices from the dealers were collected and shared with Air Resources Board. Then Air Resources Board discussed a resolution with the manufacturer. And the results for some of these that we've investigated are published in our OBD reference document. So here's a few vehicles that we got a resolution or some sort of resolution on. So we found early 2000 Nissan Maximas, Infiniti i30s not completing a catalyst monitor because the catalyst was defective. We have yet to get that vehicle back in our hands in our laboratory and reinstall the defective catalyst and do some back-to-back testing just to make sure that's really the issue. And we'll give that to Air Resources Board to in turn work with Nissan on a fix. But for now, our OBD reference document is just guidance saying it may require a catalyst, since we don't have a robust study on that one to guarantee that's the fault. The next vehicle, the 2000 BMW 323, it had an oxygen sensor readiness monitor. But when these went to the dealers were unaware of an old recall that came out in 2000 model year, I think it was, calendar year. And they were inappropriately charging motorists for a repair they didn't need. So again, Air Resources Board talked to BMW. We wrote this up in our OBD reference to educate our inspectors and smog check technicians, and we even have the copy of the service bulletin in our document that says it's free to the consumer. There may be more documents coming out from BMW to further clarify that this is at no cost to the motorist. The vehicles need a reflash to fix them. The last one here was, I think it was a 2004 model year Ford E350 van. Near 100% of them were not setting catalyst monitor, even on their first inspection. So it looked more like a design issue from Ford on these. So ARB contacted Ford. Ford readily stepped in, looked at the issue, and found a software glitch. So they've got a reflash out for these now. And our OBD reference document explains that the vehicles need the software update in order to cure this issue. So the SmogCheck OBD reference document, it used to be our Appendix J for Bar 97 vehicles that communicated OBD testability issues, was updated a while back for the OIS tested vehicles. And to summarize the contents, it contains the test standards. I got a call just yesterday. The inspector wasn't aware of the number of monitors required to be complete on a vehicle. That's on page 3. It has mostly monitor readiness issues covered for vehicles for both Bar 97 and Bar OIS. And within each line item, when it does reference a service bulletin or a recall, whenever we can get our hands on that document, you can click that link and it'll go down within the 200 pages in there and it'll show you the actual recall or service bulletin document. There's suggestions to how to repair the vehicle in some cases. There's suggestions for how to inspect a vehicle. Federally certified vehicles without OBD2, it cautions them to make sure to enter the proper certification type. Sometimes the OIS will skip the OBD test portion of an inspection on these vehicles. So that entry is critical to get that proper test. And some vehicles just need a repair before inspection, like a reflash. So on the bottom of the slide is the link to that document. The latest version that went out recently contains information about the Bar OIS software was tuned to ignore incomplete continuous monitors for federal diesels over 8,500 gross vehicle weight without OBD2. So if the Bar OIS fails to communicate with these vehicles, some communicate, some don't, the inspector must use the result of the bulb check for the overall result of the OBD test if the Bar OIS offers this option. And this is the list of the vehicles where that may occur. The next slide here will show the screen that they might see. So if they see this, use the result of the bulb check, we're asking that they enter yes and use that for the OBD overall result for the inspection. Okay, and lastly, how do we tune our Bar OIS software? So by individual vehicle at a VIN number level, or by model year, fuel type, or vehicle type of certification, California Federal, we can switch on the individual portions of the inspection, meaning we can turn off the OBD data collection portion, or the visual test, or smoke test, or liquid leak, for example. We can adjust the pass-fail standards, the number of monitors required, whether a mill's required to be on or not, and most recently we turn on data validation. And finally, we can adjust what data is collected. Some vehicles will have an issue returning certain pieces of OBD data, so we can turn those on or off individually. That, it's my contact information for any questions.
Anybody have questions from the advisory group? Seeing none, Charlie, from the audience?
Yes, I'm Charlie Peters, Clean Air Performance Professionals, and found some of the subject matter here quite interesting. And one of the things that I'm confused about is a situation where a consumer is having an issue with monitors. The referee refers the car to the new car dealer says you got to pay, here, that's fine. But in order to file a complaint at the Area Resources Board and have that accepted, it is our impression that it requires the car manufacturer's refusal in writing to repair the car, which cannot and will not happen. The Bureau of Automotive Repair, I've heard some rumors that they might consider the possibility of suggesting that these kinds of issues generate maybe even a temporary or a complaint to the Bureau of Automotive Repair. And our experience is that the Bureau of Automotive Repair has been extremely effective at getting an appropriate resolution for the consumer in these issues. Because the new car dealer, if they don't have an ARD, are not going to be in the car business. Not saying that that's the right solution, because it's not. But we're having vehicles that are creating problems, are running consumers around and around and up and down and in circles, and cars that should be getting repaired are getting manipulated rather than fixed due to the inefficiencies of the program and the lack of the ability of the consumer to file a complaint with the Bureau of Automotive Repair as an accepted practice, and getting some help from the Bureau that we have found to be extremely effective here, and that was certainly not a part of the presentation here. So I certainly would encourage that possibility of encouraging the consumer, even on an ongoing or a temporary basis, to kind of work through some of this stuff to work out how in the world can a consumer get a warranty issue taken care of, just like this gentleman presented. The consumer ends up, well, this part is not covered, and so you got to pay, and so on and so forth. And we have found that system currently, even with the PZEVs, is virtually totally dysfunctional, not working properly. So we would encourage the possibility of that consideration and expanding that a bit to better serve the consumer in California, which is at this juncture still getting the short end of the stick on their warranty work.
Just quickly to respond, I believe we've addressed at least part of that concern in the new vehicle inspection report message going on the Bar OS equipment early next year. It has a statement in there that says if the consumer is dissatisfied with the warranty-related repairs at a dealer, they can contact the Bureau for support.
Very cool.
Yeah, I thought it would be best to just kind of head that one off and not ping pong the consumer back and forth between the dealership and the manufacturer and get us involved. Ultimately, it may point eventually to the Air Resources Board to get involved, but I thought it would just be best just get it to us. We'll look into the matter and sort it all out. Any other questions for Paul? I knew you had something. All right, Tracy.
Tracy Renee, Automotive Service Councils of California. I'm just curious, kind of, Charlie kind of hit on it a little bit, but a vehicle not under warranty, a vehicle out of warranty with a monitor not ready status, at what point with the consumer, for instance, are they still required to spend their $650 and, they go everywhere, they go to the dealer, they go here, they go there, the monitor still won't run, now they get a waiver, the referee, and 2 years go by and they're doing it again and they can't get another waiver and their car's still not fixed, and what's happening with those? I know it's probably a very small percentage of vehicles, but I'm just wondering, as far as for the consumer and everybody else involved, for that matter, how is that being addressed?
We have a consumer assistance program for vehicle repair and retirement. Vehicles need to be repaired and fixed to comply with the standards for the test.
No.
Vehicle, the examples you're talking about, these are vehicles under warranty or not under warranty? I wasn't quite clear of the.
Just a vehicle
okay.
that, let's say, take a vehicle and the cat monitor will not run.
Right.
And it goes everywhere, and it still will not run. And then what? I mean,
So
are you
we've
saying
looked into a
that-
lot of these just because we want to identify any potential bugs in our software related to the OS equipment, and almost all of them, other than a few of the exceptions in this guide, that the vehicle needs repair. So we've begun more of an effort with the smog check relicensure training to educate, help educate the industry about diagnosing what it takes to run a monitor. There's enabling criteria. We're finding things like a thermostat is not working. You would never think that has anything to do with a catalyst monitor running, but if the vehicle's not in its operating temperature, it'll never do that. So we're providing some of that through training to kind of get back to industry, and that hopefully that'll help on the repair side of things.
I guess what I'm trying to understand is, let's say a consumer is exhausted everything. They've been to the dealer, they've been everywhere, and the car still isn't fixed. At that point, what happens? If they get a waiver, that's fine. I mean, then, 2 years down the road, the same thing. I mean, I'm just making this up. Say
Right,
the same
right.
thing's happening. What in those situations, are those just individual special circumstances at the time? I mean, how is that addressed?
Yeah, we usually hear about those. I mean, the legislative offices usually get involved. The consumer's exhausted everything. Well, they think they've exhausted everything. Maybe there's some things that they didn't know existed with the Bureau's Consumer Assistance Program. The referee program, we've directed some consumers to in those, but the very kind of onesie, twosie situations like that, we usually get dragged into it and hear about it through, a very understandably so frustrated consumer. We wouldn't know about it until someone, they go to another, well, they elevate it at bar if they're dealing with bar, or if they go to a legislative office, we usually get involved that way. And we'll step in and do what we can. I've never seen one that we just throw our hands up in the air and said, well, I don't know what to do this one. We got to issue some kind of non-existent waiver from the smog program or anything like that. We usually work with them to get them through the system. And the others, where there are more common occurrences, I guess Paul's kind of laid out through the study that we undertook. And there will be some more, I'm sure, that come up. Other questions, comments? Charlie?
I think Charlie Peters, Clean Air Performance Professionals, representing Coalition of Motorists. From the motorist perspective, there seems to be, I didn't really hear, there's a list of these cars that have difficulty with the monitors. And so here's this customer, and he goes through maybe a dozen smog checks in different stations and trying to spend their money, trying to get this resolved, going to the dealer, doing all this stuff, running in circles, and really, at the end of the day, there's nothing to take this guy and inform the technician that's looking at this car. Here's this car, it's been to a dozen different stations, it's been to the new car dealer, and it's stuck in this trying to get the monitors to work. That has been shown to be a problem with this particular car in your database, but we've allowed this customer to go through this kind of, well, there's only one customer out of 40 million. And no, there are customers out here that we're not taking care of as well as we might if we give this some further consideration. So there needs to be some way to get this customer, and is the right answer that the car is probably fixable? You bet. And can we get some, this just, well, it wasn't fixable. No, I'm sorry, there is no such thing as a non-fixable car. It may be too expensive to address or whatever, but there is some additional dig into this pile that I think is appropriate for the consumer, because there's some issues in the marketplace that need some further consideration. Thank you.
I can respond to that a little bit. So when we get a call on an individual vehicle, the first thing we do is we use tools to look at our data. we look to see, is there a pattern failure on that vehicle, or is it truly just one-off vehicle that's broken? That's the first place we start. After we get there, and if we do find a pattern type of failure on a particular year, make, model type of vehicle, then as I stated here, we'll tune the software to make an exception for that vehicle so that we'll pass the inspection.
Charlie Peters, is it possible in the database to identify those particular cars that are having that difficulty so that the guy's starting to do a smog check, that they'll know to call, that somebody that really knows what's going on here that can assist in helping to get this guy from this very arduous, inappropriate activity? There's got to be a better way through this than we're currently experiencing, because there are some specific consumers that are being mistreated by the system, and that very possibly we could improve.
Do we have something that's built in, or it's through the guidance document, or whatever it's called?
So when a station gets a vehicle that's a particular issue and our bar industry help desk cannot address the issue, it gets escalated to engineering, and we look into it in
Right.
grave detail. We've got hundreds of hours looking into many of these individual vehicles.
All right.
And again, if there is an issue with the vehicle, it has a fault in its OBD system by design or whatever, we make an exception for it.
Right.
But the question is, can that notice get to the providing smog station and consumer up front, because this is a list of cars that have this problem, rather than allowing this customer to get caught in this whirling downhill game? Can the smog machine identify these vehicles that have this problem and keep the customer out of that loop, so they can talk to you or the right persons that you've already worked through on this particular engine family or whatever it is, to keep the customer out of this bad place?
So right now we rely on the industry to read the OBD reference document and communicate those vehicles back to the customer.
This is Ed Van Mill. I run the referee program. And for those vehicles that we've addressed through ARB with the manufacturers, and the manufacturers are currently working on repairs, for those particular vehicles and those particular monitors, we've adjusted the monitor readiness requirements so that when the consumer goes in to get a vehicle like that inspected, the monitor readiness requirements have already been adjusted so that that particular monitor is not required to pass on that vehicle. So I think that addresses...
No. We are finding current issues
Welcome
with
to the
current
club, Ed.
cars that are not meeting the criteria that you mentioned, sir.
Good try. We'll have the discussion continues. I'm not sure. So is the list? There is no list of vehicles out there other than, or on this the guidance document. Okay.
That's it.
Yeah, that's the guidance. But it's not built into the OIS software or anything like that. Okay. Want to make that clear.
We always have the referee.
Right. Right. That is the outlet. Okay, John McConnell.
Yeah, John McConnell from IAPA Santa Barbara. Isn't that what the tuning of the bar OIS is? Isn't that what you were talking about?
Correct.
You're
correct.
making,
Yeah.
so those cars that are coming in that have the known problems, you're already doing that within the tuning program. Is that correct?
It's essentially invisible to the inspector and the motorist.
Right.
They come in, the machine does what it's supposed to and gets the appropriate test.
Okay. That's what I thought, but I didn't hear that come up at the end there.
All right. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate the presentation. We'll move along to our next presenter, Ed Van Mill. Good segue there with the referee. I saw this presentation about 6 months or so ago to the Air Resources Board and some of their top-level management, and I thought it would be a good thing to share with the advisory group at the next opportunity. We could squeeze it into an advisory group meeting. And thank you, Ed, for agreeing to do that. I thought there might be a few chuckles about some of the slides, and to see what consumers are attempting to do with and vehicles, or things that they're attempting to call vehicles, right? Roadworthy vehicles.
Correct.
I'll let you take it away from there. But Ed Van Mill with BAR Standards and Training Unit, which is within the Engineering and Research branch.
Thank you, Pat. As most of you know, the referee is kind of the catch-all for vehicles like you mentioned, Tracy, and Charlie, also for consumers that are experiencing issues with getting their vehicles to pass. But we also do a lot of other interesting work. And I should mention that the referee services are conducted by a contractor. So when I say we, I'm kind of including them in that analogy. So one of the more interesting services that the referee provides is certification of SPC&S vehicles, and we call them SPC&S vehicles because that's what DMV calls them. These are, next slide. Oh, sorry. There we go. Thank you. Pays to pay attention. So special SPC&S vehicles are given that acronym because they're specially constructed, and there's a few things in this slide that are fairly important to note. It's built for private use, not for resale, not constructed by a licensed manufacturer or remanufacturer. It's built from a kit, new or used, or a combination of new or used parts, or a vehicle reported for dismantling as required by other sections, and when reconstructed does not resemble the original make of the vehicle dismantled. The last sentence is one that we have to point out frequently. It is not a vehicle which has been repaired or restored to its original design by replacing parts. With the advent of STAR and OIS, we're seeing some consumers wanting to get out of the smog check program by taking their vehicle and making very minor changes to it and calling it a specially constructed vehicle. And so we have to remain diligent at the referee and at BAR to make sure that we abide by the law. So the purpose of this slide is to demonstrate the section of Health and Safety 44017.4, which specifies that SPC&S vehicles, as defined by Section 580 of the Vehicle Code, are required to be inspected by the referee. So the referee is the only outlet to receive the vehicle inspection. SB 100 was passed in 2001, authored by Maurice Johannesson, who was an auto enthusiast and legislator from the Reading area. It allows owners to register a specially constructed vehicle as brand new and exempted from smog check as if it were a 1965 or older model vehicle. I'll have some good photos for you here in a few minutes that should pique your attention, but most of you are seeing, you'll see some unique vehicles, Cobra cars. Just an interesting point, there are more kit Cobras on the road now than there were original Cobras ever built. So if you see one, the chances of it being an original Cobra are very, very slim. So the SB 500 process is initiated by the consumer visiting DMV. The DMV can allocate up to 500 SB 100 certificates, called a certificate of sequence, per year, and they're given on a first-come, first-served basis. For the first several years of the SB 100 process, these certificates were snapped up faster than Bruce Springsteen tickets. They would be gone in a matter of a very small number of hours on January 1st, if DMV was open for business, and everybody else had to wait till the following year. The last several years, the numbers have tapered off pretty substantially, and there have been a few years where at the end of the year, there were only in the range of 350, 380 distributed. I'm not sure if that, we assumed it when we first saw this trend happening, that it was a function of the economy being in the tank for a while. But that continues to be the case now, so it may just be that everybody that wanted one got one, and now we're dealing with numbers smaller than 500 every year. So to complete the SB 100 process, you get to work not with one government agency, but 3. So you have to be fairly diligent. The 4 steps are, first, to obtain a DMV certificate sequence by completing the application and a statement of facts form. Then bring the vehicle to the CHP, and they will assign a VIN. They will want to see all your paperwork and receipts showing VIN numbers for the major parts. Then pass an inspection at the smog check referee, and bring all your documents back to DMV to receive your registration and plates. So, as I mentioned earlier, these are fairly entertaining, at times, inspections that are performed by the referee and BAR gets to review and take a look at. Some of these cars are extremely exotic, extremely high, extremely expensive, and some aren't. We see all kinds of unique, specially constructed vehicles. This actually isn't one that we saw. This actually came from the internet, but it does represent a cross-section of the vehicles that we do see as a result of SBCNS inspections. This is a typical Cobra kit car. There are many companies that manufacture the kits for these. The prices range pretty dramatically. Some of them start with a ground-up new car frame constructed. Others are bodies that will fit on other vehicles that are already constructed. So you can see just about everything you can imagine, from a 4-cylinder Cobra all the way to a 427 side oiler, almost as original as you can imagine. This is a vehicle that we have been seeing more of recently. With the advent of STAR and a little better enforcement at BAR, we see consumers at times wanting to take whatever measures they can to get out of the smog check program. So in this case, this is an 83 Blazer with a 74 frame, and they put a 60s vintage engine in it. Chances are the vehicle's in a wreck, bent the frame, got a frame from a different vehicle, and at that time put in the old motor. So some of these are simply, it appears, trying to skirt the smog check program. These are some vehicles that were predominantly in Southern California and some beach towns that slipped through the process. I don't think they ever showed up at the referee for an inspection, and got plated, and DMV ended up rescinding the plates for these. One of the difficulties that DMV has in granting these certificates of sequence and registration is that there's only about 350 a year. So the likelihood of a DMV clerk seeing one of these is about, well, it's not quite the odds of hitting the lottery, but it's pretty rare. So there are times when the process needs to be reviewed. This is a kit car that originally was plated, but it was powered by a lawnmower engine. This is something that was basically used in parades and that kind of thing. So we do get a lot of parade vehicles that apply for SBCNSs and are turned away. There was a company, Greg Coburn may need to correct me on this, but there was a company that received approval from the feds to bring in a group of Korean vehicles that they had planned on converting. Their sole purpose for import was, and the agreement for their import was, they were going to be converted to electric vehicles. The plan fell apart. The vehicles were already on this side of the ocean, and they were in a warehouse. There's a website, and they'll still sell these vehicles without a drivetrain in them. But since it's not a kit car, it doesn't apply to an SBCNS. And these vehicles, we've had a few of them turn up where a consumer bought them and wanted to register them, and there really is no way to legally register them in in California and probably not in the U.S. They don't meet federal motor vehicle safety standards. There's a number of issues with these vehicles. This is a production off-road vehicle. Sometimes the referee will get a vehicle in, they'll do a little research, they'll find out it wasn't a kit car at all. The consumer bought it as a turnkey vehicle, which does not apply for SPCNS application. This is a vehicle that the owner claimed he built from scrap parts and tubing. A little bit of research. There's the website for the same vehicle where they sell them en masse. So not exactly a kit car. It wasn't built by the owner. There were a number of things that prohibited it from being an SPCNS vehicle. Ironic though, didn't repaint it, didn't boy, you think you would have been a little more savvy than that, but I don't know, Google is our friend at times. This is a sample of a small volume manufacturer. This is not a kit car. This is a car that you can buy turnkey. There's a company that builds these, and they abide by all the small volume manufacturer requirements imposed by ARB. But you can buy a kit that resembles this car if you wish. But some people don't want to do the work of assembling the vehicle themselves. And to qualify as an SPCNS, you don't have to build the car yourself. You can buy the parts from company A, you can have company B assemble the car, and you can drive it away. So it does not require that you necessarily get your hands dirty. This is a rather unique vehicle. A builder in Colorado is importing the Holden Commodore body and mating it to a Caprice PPV. So this is actually a gray market vehicle as well as an SPCNS. It raised lots of issues, and we had to work through that in order to figure out a way to determine whether it was an SPCNS or not. Pardon me? It wasn't no, correct. It was a gray market vehicle in the end. This is an Audi. We do get some vehicles from Mexico brought in. There was not this vehicle, but another one where the owner actually contacted ARB to find out if they could bring it in, was told they could not, and they still brought it in. And so sometimes those things get a little ugly. This is not a Q7 from Mexico. It was not possible to meet U.S. standards. It was, however, plated as a conventional Audi Q7, and I think in part because of the STAR program, they were no longer able to get a conventional smog check inspection. Were referred to the referee, and that's when it was discovered this is actually a gray market vehicle that had been getting smog check inspections prior to STAR. We have had, I would say, a dozen or more or so gray market vehicles that had to come to the referee because they couldn't get a smog check inspection anymore. And some of those vehicles had been in California on the street, licensed and registered for several years. So those vehicles typically have to go to a a certification lab and modifications performed. And on some of those vehicles, especially the real exotics, Lamborghinis, Ferraris, Porsches, and many others actually, the cost of modifying those vehicles to meet California standards is pretty prohibitive. So this is a Datsun 280Z with a Ferrari kit. Sometimes these are done very well. Of course, a Ferrari aficionado would know the difference, but most other people wouldn't. And sometimes they're done, as I mentioned, very well, very cleanly. We see some very impressive vehicles. I'm missing a slide. Okay. I had a slide in here for when they are not done very cleanly. And it was just a primered, oil-leaking car that was not done as well, but still applied and still could have gotten the SPCNS. This is just a dune buggy, and some of these are eligible for SPCNS. You can see it's got a windshield and lights and tail lights and some the other required seat belts and the other items required. And I mentioned earlier we see some very exotic cars. This is Factory 5 is a company that is in South Africa and builds some very exotic kit cars. They make a GT40 kit, and they bought the rights to use the GT40 parts and emblems and everything else. And some of those I wish I had a photo here. Some of those GT40s sell for upwards of $700,000 when they're complete. So very, very interesting cars. I really envy the referees when one of these comes in. Although all they get to do is test it. They don't get to actually drive it. So this is sold as a kit. Some of these cars, the manufacturers sell as kits and as a turnkey, because many other states allow turnkey cars. So I hope that's piqued your curiosity. The referee, if I can say it, the referee does a lot of interesting and unusual functions, and this is one of the more interesting ones, but it still doesn't offset all the rest of them. So if you have any questions, here's my contact information.
Thank you, Ed. I wondered if we could, Mark Eddy is in the room. Mark's our referee coordinator at the Bureau of Automotive Repair. All the traffic on some of these issues seems to go through his desk, so I just wanted to point him out in the crowd here.
He's the guy that knows all the nuts and bolts and details. And
Yep.
So.
Yep. Thanks, Mark. And thank you, Ed. Questions, comments? Nothing from the advisory group. Charlie?
Yes, I'm Charlie Peters, Clean Air Performance Professionals. I noted a comment there about cars going to a lab that to be updated smog and safety-wise to meet U.S. requirements, federal requirements. Can he give us any of the statistics as to what volume of cars are getting that service? I've heard rumors that the total number of cars that are actually being certified is 0. I just wondered if my information was valid or not.
Yeah, the number is very low. Oftentimes, consumers will take their gray market, it's usually a gray market vehicle, to the lab to get an estimate of what it would cost. And sometimes very often, when they find out what it costs, they often will sell the car back in the country of origin. So yeah, it's very expensive on some vehicles.
Very interesting answer, but my question was, is it 0? And very low and 0 is very different. And I don't think that there is any cars being certified to meet the standards to come into California that are not U.S. cars, federally certified or meeting this other specification. We set up situations where at the border with cars coming over and how often they come per year and requiring them to go and get certified. And that's part of the procedures, I believe, at the Bureau of Automotive Repair. And I'm under the impression that the total participation in that program, which is both federal and California law, is 0.
It's possible it's 0. I don't know what the number is. I do know very few people in the last couple of years have done it. It has been done in years past. I think the reason it's 0 or close to 0 is when you've got a car that's worth $60,000, $80,000, but it's going to cost you $35,000 to get it modified. People choose not to do it.
I'm under the impression that there are a number of cars coming from Mexico that are ultimately getting certified, being used in the marketplace, participating in the process, are not appropriate cars, should have gone through that service. They don't because of the costs. And so my question is, are there any, can you provide people here the data, since you're in charge of the referee system, can you provide the data of the cars that are getting the updates at the lab? And my information indicates it's 0, and there could be a significant door open there of cars getting certified and being used in the marketplace that are not meeting appropriate standards.
And a consumer can get, it's not a state lab, it's a private lab that does this work, and so they don't report to us. And we haven't asked, that's true, because the number of these vehicles that we see is so low to start with. And the only way we would know that they hadn't is that we would have to ask ourselves, did that car ever come back And whether it did or didn't, we'd have to determine that. So, yeah, the number could be 0. And if it is, it's generally the consumer that chose not to pursue it.
And my concern is that there is a significant volume of cars that are coming in and getting into our market and are being used on the roads in California that are required to get that procedure in order to go on the road. That is not happening, and they're participating in our system inappropriately, and that's my concern.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
I don't know if there's certainly we know the number of vehicles that have come to the gray market process through the referee, and, maybe we can talk to the Air Resources Board if they have any guesstimate on some of the ones that have started the process. And
it's more and more difficult for those vehicles to continue driving on the road without being certified properly.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Ed. Appreciate the presentation. All right, our next presenter for the final 2 items outside of the other, item number 9, but items number 7 and 8 on the agenda, Bill Thomas, starting off with the auto body inspection program, which is under your branch in enforcement operations. Welcome.
Thank you, Pat. Good morning, everybody. Again, thanks for attending our quarterly advisory group meeting. So the auto body inspection program, or the no-cost auto body inspection program, if I can not hit the wrong buttons again here, is a program the Bureau offers to consumers who have had collision repairs performed, and the Bureau inspects the vehicle to make sure the repairs were performed according to the estimate and according to the industry standards. The consumer must have been the registered owner at the time of repairs. And for more information on the program, there's a link in there, and it's at our website. It comes up on the front page of the website. Consumers have a couple of options actually right now they have one option for participating in the program, is to call the toll-free number that's on the screen there. The online inspection request form is in development right now. We hope to have it available in the next few weeks. That will enable them to just click on a link at our website and answer a few brief questions. We try and make the participation in the program as simple as possible, only grabbing a few pieces of information, the consumer's name, contact info, and the city where they had the vehicle repaired, and the name of the shop that performed the repairs. From there, we can gather the rest of the information. Our field representatives will gather the information as part of the inspection. Additionally, the Bureau is currently accepting salvage vehicles into the program. Anybody with a salvage vehicle, whether they revived the title to a salvage vehicle or purchased it and found that they had a branded title as salvage or revived salvage, can call the auto body inspection number, and the Bureau will come out and look at the vehicle. Obviously, it'll be a little difficult. We won't have an estimate that or a damage appraisal that says what was wrong with the car, but we certainly are interested in looking at those, primarily because, as has been mentioned at these meetings in the past, that's the big question mark, is what is the status of salvage vehicles. The Bureau is really looking at this closely. As an example, some numbers that we've looked at, not that they're very recent, but in 2006, one study showed that annually in the United States, about 2.5 million vehicles are declared total loss each year, and about 1.5 million of those end up back on roadways. A 2000 report, or some numbers provided by DMV in 2000, so obviously very old, showed that about 150,000 a year in California were registered as revived salvage. So certainly that's why we're looking at it, and we want to get an idea of what the issue is. If there is an issue, we'd like to inspect as many salvage vehicles as we can. And certainly that'll be no cost as part of the auto body inspection program. Consumers requesting an auto body inspection, again, my staff gathers minimal information so they can contact the consumer. We forward that to the appropriate field office, and it is the field office with jurisdiction over the repair facility, and a representative will be assigned to it and will contact the consumer to schedule a time and location for the inspection that is convenient to the consumer. The consumer should have the invoice. Our website says they need to have the invoice. If they don't, we still will take it in and make efforts to obtain that for them. And then the bar representative will inspect the vehicle per the final invoice. If problems are identified during the inspection, the consumers have three options. They can file a complaint, and the Bureau will conduct further investigation, go out to the repair facility, do all of our standard complaint investigation procedures. They may just choose to contact their insurance company and seek resolution through that. Or they may choose, it may not be of a great concern to them, so they can choose to take no action whatsoever. It's up to the consumer. Some statistics on the auto body inspection program. Last year, in fiscal year 15-16, we did about 200 inspections requested and 150 were completed. Sometimes consumers change their mind between calling and us and the field rep contacting them for various reasons, and we don't really track what those reasons are. Only 68 of those moved on to a complaint. You may sense some dissatisfaction in my voice over those numbers, because those are certainly not what the Bureau would like to see with the number of collisions in California each year, and we would definitely like to inspect a lot more of those vehicles. And this year we're projecting to increase a little bit. The 16-17 numbers for the first quarter, we've had 74 requested and a higher percentage actually conducted. Complaints are right about the same. About a third of them, 30 to 40%, end up as a complaint. And there's my contact info. Any questions on the auto body inspection program?
Those statistics, were those just the revised salvage inspection, or that's total auto body inspection?
That's not salvage at all. That's just auto body inspection.
Okay.
That's why, again, there's some dissatisfaction. We would expect to do a lot more. It's just getting the word out is always proves to be a challenge.
Jack, you were the one who had asked for this to be on the agenda, and do you have a question or comment?
No, I want to thank you for bringing it up and having, Bill, thanks for the presentation. I have a couple questions. One, on you mentioned that now you're accepting salvage vehicles in the program. Have you inspected up to this point any salvage vehicles?
Not that I'm aware of. I believe we've seen a few. Again, we reached out to some owners we were able to identify as owning salvage vehicles, and the response was not, again, what we would expect. So, it's a tricky situation. If they may know they're salvage and not want the Bureau looking at the car, or so. I'm pretty sure I know of a few, but it's a very, very low number.
Yeah, I'm just curious of how, in terms of inspecting a salvage vehicle, because my understanding is a lot of I don't know the percentage, but vehicles get salvaged because of the airbag deployment and the cost of replacing the airbag. So when these cars are repaired, they don't put in an airbag. So how would you, when you're inspecting, is that part of the inspection process? How would you let the consumer know whether the car was repaired or the airbags were replaced?
I think really the purpose of the inspection, again, as I said, we don't have a damage appraisal, so we're not able to know exactly what caused the vehicle to be salvaged. I mean, another manager and I went out to the Copart yard, couple of Copart yards, and looked at some of these vehicles, and you could look about half of them and say, yeah, that should just be fixed and put back on the road. Then the other half, not so much. And so it's difficult knowing what's wrong with them. What our reps are basically going to do is just look at the frame, impact absorbers, things that are obvious, and look for obvious structural flaws. And additionally, I mean, we'll do a bulb check on the airbag light. It should light and would stay on for a few seconds when started, and then go out. And so we'll do that. If the bulb never comes on, it's going to raise question marks. Maybe just visually inspect the airbag areas and see if it looks normal. But obviously, we're not going to scan the the airbag controller or anything like that. It's just not able to do that in a no cost. We're going to do the best we can, and it's more of a the greater purpose is just to kind of get some data and start to identify if there is something we need to look at more closely.
And the other question has to do with if problems are identified and the consumer chooses not to take any action at that point. You may have identified some issues. Consumer says, I just don't want to pursue this with the shop. What does the BAR in that case, how do they handle that situation?
If there are major concerns, we're certainly not going to choose to take no action like the consumer. The field office certainly has the option of going to the facility and requesting records and doing a little further investigation. I mean, that is what we're charged to do. So if there's a concern, we're going to follow up on it.
I'm just curious as to, at that point, technically you don't have a consumer complaint. So when you arrive to the facility, what does the BAR field representative say? They're there for what? Just, hey, I'm here to look at your records? They can't technically say they're here on a complaint, or do they actually tell the shop that they're there based on a auto body inspection program? How does that usually, how is it supposed to work?
I think it would just be a matter of, we're just doing our statutory duty of going out and following up on the industry, and we'd like to see some records. There were some concerns identified, and we'd like to look at records. We're not going to say it's part of a complaint because it's not. Our reps aren't going to lie to the shop, but they're going to probably be a little vague as to, and just ask to see some records. Again, it is our statutory authority.
Now, the reason I ask is that I think this may have come up in the past, and some shops have said, I had a BR official in my facility, and they said they weren't there on a complaint, they were just doing a random inspection, or that was the phrase.
Mm-hmm.
And so they didn't, why are you picking on me? I mean, why did they just walk in that particular day? So I guess I wanted to find out how that is handled, because usually when someone comes in, it's based on a complaint of some kind, and the shop wants to know why they have the government in their facility. So when the representative is a little vague, obviously it creates some concern there on the shop's part. The communication, I think, is very important when the field representative's there. Transparency as to why they're there, and I think the shop wants to cooperate, but when the BAR official is vague, it just creates some awkwardness and concern there. I just wanted to bring that to your attention because that's been brought to my attention.
Thank you for that. And I know the field managers, Jaime and Rick, work very closely on making sure the reps go out there and the interaction is appropriate. It's not to be confrontational, but again, it is what we're supposed to do. And I think you said it yourself, we're usually out there for a complaint. But again, we certainly do have the ability to go out to a shop. We may see an ad in the paper for a facility that's advertising something that raises questions. It's our obligation to go out there and see what's going on. And so, but the reps are trained and expected to approach that in such a way. We're not, and I speak, well, yeah, we're going to handle it in a professional manner, not in as professional, but in a professional manner.
We'll take a look at how the reps are what they're trained or told to talk about what their purpose of being at the facility is, and how that's communicated. I don't know if it was necessarily a random inspection or not, but again, as Bill said, especially in the case of auto body, I mean, some of these things, I don't know if you just wait for consumer complaints, we're kind of, these are the repairs that you don't know there's something wrong. There's no knocking or something not working right on the car necessarily. It cosmetically the car looks beautiful and it looks like it was repaired correctly, and there may be things that weren't done that should have been done. And the only person that can stand in the shoes of that consumer and know whether or not that was the case, and not wait for a consumer complaint, is the Bureau. And I think that is to reiterate and drive home kind of Bill's point, is our statutory obligation. The auto body program, inspection program tries to do that, encourage consumers, draw them out. Still, the numbers are not nearly what they were. Dan will tell you back when he was running the program, no offense to Bill or anything, but we had a big PR campaign. There was a lot of attention on auto body. Jack, you were knee-deep in the thick of it with Jackie Spear and the auto body study that was ongoing, and there was a lot of tension at that time. So consumer awareness and was heightened. We had a PR campaign specifically focused on it. We had these gasoline pump toppers, I guess, with education about the program and the ability to ask for an inspection. I don't know the numbers back in those days, but they were probably tenfold of what we have today, is what Dan will tell you. Yeah, probably in the thousands, low thousands.
In the low thousands,
Yeah,
to my
so I
understanding.
mean, dropped way off the radar in terms of the focus or consumer involvement. So trying to just draw that out, trying to get more involved. We definitely think there's and this is an area of the industry that we certainly want to be involved in. So just fulfilling, as Bill said, our authority there, and hoping to, if there's no problems, obviously we walk away from it, but look at some of the records and see what we find, not necessarily waiting for a consumer complaint. So we'll talk to the field offices and reps about how that kind of a uniform message or presentation when they actually visit a facility.
Yes,
I
Jonathan.
believe at a previous advisory group meeting, there was some discussion of a general auto repair inspection program. Is that eventually in the works?
Yeah. Nothing that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
So.
John?
One thing, and it's probably a little off topic, but I know in the past when there were a lot of floods happening, like we see right now, all the issues that happened after Katrina with the flood-damaged vehicles, with titles being washed, coming to California, and there was some coordination at that time with DMV and BAR to look at those types of things. Are there any plans with all that going on right now, or is it just kind of off to the side?
Nothing that I'm aware of to look, yeah. I mean, that still falls under the umbrella of salvage vehicles, and
Right.
there's just nothing there other than a brake and lamp inspection.
All right, thanks.
Tracy Renee with the Automotive Service Councils of California. One of the things I just thought of when you were discussing this is just as far as consumer outreach and letting consumers knowing about this program. You guys developed quite a few brochures, one for this and smog program, various brochures. I had went to order the brochures because we have envelope, just to put the information out there. And it's not easy to get the brochures. So the order form is like 5. You can order 5 of each brochure. I think that if as far as industry, helping get the word out for brochures, we would need more than 5. And just to make that easier to, to have available on all of the brochures.
I know there's a unit within the Bureau that is looking at all of our brochures and updating all of them, and I'm certain, I know part of that unit is in this room, a big part of that unit, and they will, I'm sure they've heard what you said, and we'll look at ways of making the brochures readily available. I mean, that's one of the best things we can do, is just get as many of those brochures out there as possible.
Because they are nice brochures.
To the next meeting, even. Yeah.
There you go, boxes.
But there's got to be
everybody leaves with a box.
Please help us distribute them. But no, we'll look at other ways to reach out beyond this venue to get that information out there, because there are some pretty good brochures that we have available. They are all available online. I know that's not the best. It's not as slick looking or anything like that, and fancy, but or maybe easily to not as easy to display in your shops, but the information is at least available. But yeah, we'll look at getting the pretty looking brochures out as best we can to those who want them, by all means. I know the field offices should be well stocked with them as well. And if that's not the case, we'll make it the case.
Yes.
All right. Any other questions for Bill on this presentation? Nothing on the webcast? No. All right, Bill, turning over to your ongoing regular update of enforcement statistics.
So, again, we've been doing this, I've been up here providing this presentation for many quarters now, so several. So I'm going to go through this rather quickly because I see we are getting up, it is about noon and up against the clock, so bear with me, and then hopefully everybody's kind of skimmed through it, and I'll leave more time for questions than me talking about the stats. This is our pie chart. I'm going to talk with staff about colors. I don't really like that contrast there. So that's one thing. My apologies for that. It's just, that was, we just went down the color selection chart just in the purple row. That's about it. Threw in a couple oranges. So we'll certainly work on making that showing a little more contrast. Again, as always, engine repair and engine performance is our greatest area, followed by general repair. These are the trend groupings. Again, trend is the area of automotive repair the consumer was seeking that generated the complaint. These are our allegations. We record up to 3 of these per complaint. So this is the consumer's allegations of what was wrong with that repair transaction. So these are the top 5 allegations listed by each trend. These stay pretty consistent over time. Nice to see this year on engine repair and performance estimates is decreasing and has been passed by damages. Certainly damage is not a good thing, but the fact that estimates is going down is a good thing. The number of complaints related to estimates, I think all of us, everybody in here would like to see that decrease. So general repair and maintenance. Auto body is our 3rd largest area of complaints, followed by transmission, smog check, and other. Other is still decreasing slowly. Our goal is to get rid of other entirely, but because there should be some area of repair that was addressed, not just random. Used car transactions, we track that. Again, that's often is related to the vehicle not passing the smog check, or a misrepresentation of the warranty, or a misunderstanding of the warranty is a better word than misrepresentation. Unlicensed activity, I think we'll always have that issue, try as we may to get everybody educated that they must be registered. We still have those that don't. Vehicle warranty, just in and of itself, not necessarily a used car, would be our lowest. And again, the numbers are trending about the same number of complaints year over year. There are registered repair facilities. And my slide. So, as I said, I would go through that quick. I did. Any questions?
Bill, for the 3 that you pulled out of the other category I think it was last year, the unlicensed used car transactions, unlicensed activity, and vehicle warranty, that wasn't a full year's worth of data, or was it last year?
I believe we pulled it out mid-year, I think.
Yes. So the numbers might run higher this year in comparison because
right,
we only
I think there was only 2 quarters.
2 quarters worth of data for those 3 categories.
Yes.
Those are the last 3 slides.
Yes.
Yeah. Any comments or questions? Advisory group? No? Bud?
Hi, Bud Rice with Quality Tune-Up Shops. A couple of quick questions. What's the total number of complaints that are being generated? Total number of complaints? You have to add up each column number or whatever, and
You would
get to something.
you would have to add each number here.
Yeah, we
and
can
the
put that
number
on the
isn't there
slide
this
from
year.
now on,
No.
but it runs between 15 and 17,000 a year.
Yes.
Okay, so in how many vehicles are there on the road that are either regular passenger cars and light-duty trucks that are in California?
I think it's about 20 million.
That's 34,500,000, somewhere right around there, registered vehicles in California.
34 million, that's just as a, we're just talking, right? We're just talking.
Just from
So let's assume it is 34 million, and
Feel
you're
like we're on a
saying,
game show, actually.
Yeah, but Jonathan didn't answer in the form of a question, so his response
It's a do-over.
do we have any statistics on how many times the average car sees a shop? In other words, out of the 34 million cars that Jonathan is saying, the average car comes in and sees the shop 2.2 times a year. Anything like that?
I think AAA has a number on that, and I think it's about 2.4.
2.4, okay. So I guess where how many of the 17,000s end up in citations? Do we know that?
Yeah, we do. None. We don't write citations as a part of a complaint. The Bureau's goal in a complaint is to address the consumer's concerns. And then, just like with the auto body inspection, like I mentioned to Jack, after the complaint is mediated and we've addressed the consumer's concerns, if there's a need, we will circle back around with the repair facility. Most of our citations, if not all, are issued as a basis of the smog check program and then for unlicensed activity.
Okay, so from the complaint side, how many of them then would you say is a positive conclusion? And in other words, how many of the 17 did the customers go, okay, I'm not super happy, but this ended up okay, out of the 17,000?
Our the only way we could measure that is our consumer satisfaction rate, and it's in the 90 percentile. So 90% of the consumers are satisfied with the result.
Okay.
Above 90%.
Okay, then let me cross over and ask my question about citations. Do we know how many citations were written in a calendar year?
In a fiscal year, I was just looking at that. Typically, we're in the neighborhood of 2,000 citations per year. That's technician and station citations. Last year, it was just about 3,400 citations with the.
So if you're combining station and technician, if I said the word event, you may have multiple citations around an event.
In most cases, yes.
Okay, so how many events do you think there were?
That resulted in a citation, it would be in the neighborhood of 1,700, about half the total citations. That's a random, rough guess, so.
So I guess as somebody who's in the industry and working in the industry, each time we touch a car, there is the possibility of a smiley face or a frowny face by the time it clears, right? I mean, every time you touch a car, right? So if in fact there are 34 million cars, and according to what Johan's saying over here, there may be 2.4 times, each vehicle gets that. That's a lot of touches that are happening in shops. Then if you base the number of complaints and even the number of citations that go against that number of touches, I think it's a pretty good record in terms of what the automotive industry is trying to do in terms of servicing the cars that we have an opportunity to service. Now, whatever that number happened to be, and I know you can get to some kind of a percentage or some kind of a ratio, of course we would like the number to go down and to be less over time, but I didn't want this topic to kind of get away from us without going, you got to be looking, and I appreciate the fact that you're looking, and when you find an off-target condition, we got to be talking about it, and we got to see if we can't make it better. But man, when you're talking about 34 million cars times 2.4 million touches, I mean, you gotta at some point go, that's not bad, guys, that's not bad. You know, at some point, you gotta say that. Okay, that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bill, just to follow up on Bud's points, I think kind of going back to it, if we look at when the Bureau was formed and the number of ARDs, and we look at today, when the Bureau was formed in 72, there were roughly not even 30,000 shops registered. Today, there's 36,500. We look at the number of complaints, and in the early years, it was about 1 complaint per ARD per year. If we look at it today, with 36,500, you're generating about 15,000 complaints with a population that's exploded in comparison. And the reason I pointed out is I think the industry gets it. I think we're really working hard to improve the marketplace, to do the right things. Working in the advisory like we do today is to improve the marketplace, to improve the experience with consumers, and to do the right things. But I think too often, especially this year, I mean, we talked about it earlier with the points that Nina brought up. You know, when we look at the number of bills that went through the legislature this year, I think we were all busy with all the stuff that was going on. The media had their frenzy with us, and so did everybody else. It seemed there was nobody left unscathed this year. But if we really look at the impact on the industry and what's going on, to Bud's point, when you're looking at 34 million cars on the road and the number of times they get touched, and to see that complaints continue to drop, the number of serious infractions that are occurring continues to drop, yeah, I think we're doing a better job. Is there still room for improvement? Absolutely. But I think at the end of the day, I think the things that we're working on to improve the marketplace, to do the right thing, has definitely evolved, and we're doing much better at it today. I think the statistics that you provide in the meetings, like I said before, and it's been a long-standing joke with all of us about other in the category that we're trying to define, what is it really? You know, the more you give us the data that really pinpoint where the problem areas are, if you point me to a target, I can go fix it. You know, and I've long used the analogy that sometimes we in the repair industry feel that we're driving down the road and there's a cop standing on the side of the road with a radar gun, but there's no speed limit posted. We get a ticket, but we don't know what the speed limit is. And that's kind of how we felt early on with some of the regulations, because trying to interpret the regulations and how they were enforced seemed to vary across the state. Now, the changes that have been made in the Bureau have improved that. And I think, again, we're all getting better at this. But I think some of the regs that we're working on, some of the things that we've talked about, you know, one of the points, and I'm going to move right into the other comments for the open public session because it ties in. When we look at what's happening with internet service providers today, and the gentleman that came up and talked about it earlier today, I would like to see on the next agenda for January for us to put the topic of web service provider companies and how we need to look at regulations that address that. And I don't care if it's your mechanic or the new one that just opened up in Irvine, California, that actually, like a third party where you bring your vehicle or they come get your vehicle, they do the transactions and all of that for you and then take it to a repair shop and kind of act as an intermediary. There's nothing in the regs that even begins to address that. And I think those are some of the things moving forward as part of the advisory. We have to kind of look at the landscape and address these types of issues. Thank you.
Please turn it off. Thank you, John. Appreciate the comments. Charlie.
I got a compliment from this gentleman the last time I was here. That's pretty amazing. Charlie Peters, Clean Air Performance Professionals. And anyway, this is an interesting discussion, and the question is, what percentage of the time is a consumer dissatisfied with the service that the last thing in the world he will do is file a complaint? I think that number may be pretty damn significant. People don't want to hassle. They're busy. They're going 900 miles a minute trying to take care of their world, and the last thing in the world they want to do is interface with their government because they don't trust their government very much, a lot of people, and so on and so forth. So we're looking at this as the opportunities here as the complaints, when maybe the opportunities here is the performance in the marketplace, such things as customer trying to get a PZEV warranty repair that we're finding never actually gets done without an appropriate encouragement of a BAR complaint form waved under the nose of the dealer. Then we get some action. But the question is, are we looking at this by complaints? Are we looking at this concerning performance in the marketplace and improvements in quality and performance and effectiveness of the marketplace, to where our primary agenda of what we're trying to do in the state of California is not turning all the cars into electric cars that have no steering wheel, no drive, we had a big hearing in the Capitol on that subject yesterday. So are we just trying to eliminate the problem by eliminating the car and not paying attention to seeing to it that, in fact, we're providing better service to the consumer? I think we need to also take into account an auditing process that finds out what the performance is in the marketplace, what percentage of cars that ought to fail a smog check do, and what is actually wrong get fixed. And the answer is that I think we've got some real opportunity to improve how the consumer is being treated by addressing those issues in a more significant fashion. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Charlie, and those are excellent points.
John?
Yeah, I think addressing what you're talking about, what Charlie's talking about, is most of the complaints in the past have been derived from communication errors with your customer. And our technology in the last 10 years, communication-wise, has changed a lot. And so I would just say, I think we really need to make sure that the electronic approval stuff gets done, because I think that's going to end a lot of the misunderstanding and the complaints that come in.
Yeah, we would agree.
Yeah, I mean, but I think part of the reason the complaints are going down is we're able to get a hold of our customers now.
Yeah.
In the old days, their car would go up in the rack and it'd sit there for 5 hours because there was no way to get a call into the customer, and that's just not the way it's happening anymore. But that's my comment.
Thank you. I think the governor, in the veto of, which one? 1174, kind of, I don't want to speak on behalf of the governor, but I think one of the things that was being looked at was, what kind of things are already out there. But the fact that Bill does this presentation, are there some things that we could add to it? I'm certainly and welcome to some suggestions along those lines. There's some things that we're working on with respect to an easier to navigate and for both consumers and the industry as it relates to our enforcement page. We're working on some things with the what's that group called? The support unit, the program support unit, excuse me.
Yeah,
I'd forgotten it. The ones that put out the brochures and such, they're working on some things. There's some really good changes that are kind of being worked on right now, and will be unveiled maybe in stages, but probably not fully completed until sometime in the early part of next year. There's some things, IT-related things that we have to do to make those changes occur, working closely with our what do they call it, the Consumer Affairs System, the licensing network that supports the Bureau of Automotive Repair. So there's some things and some interactions at play there. That's not just an easy flip of the switch to make some of these things work. But we'll have a presentation, hopefully, either if it's not in January, but maybe the next one after that in April, on some of those changes on the website to kind of make the enforcement page a little more interactive, if you will, and more easy to understand for the user.
Yep. user-friendly, yeah.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of meetings on that, and there's a lot that we're going to do to just, yes, make the interaction better informed. We can have the better informed public that's out there, I think, is better for all of us, so.
Yeah, and I really want to try to capture the essence of the spirit of the legislation, that 1174 bill, without necessarily having to draft new regulations, because I think some of this stuff is just easy, common sense administrative fixes. Other comments on bills? Update or presentation? No? Okay. Thank you, Bill. Our final agenda item, public comment on items that were not on the agenda. I know John wanted to go, and then we'll go to the audience after the advisory group
Just
has
real
its
quick,
chance. Go ahead.
Pat, I was remiss in asking Adam this morning, and maybe you have the information, but it seems like Breeze, and the reason I bring up Breeze is it keeps getting pushed back. I know you're in the third cycle now for that, and it would make it so much easier for licensure and all the stuff having to do with obtaining licenses and everything to get Breeze on track. Is there any estimate on when they're looking to actually get BAR into the Breeze system?
No, I heard no dates. We're still kind of on standby waiting for that announcement. That is not stopping us from taking care of some things that were done for the first two Breeze releases, the boards and bureaus that went through the Breeze process already. Online license renewal, for example, we're looking at doing something there. I'm not sure how far along we are, but I was hoping to have an update. I was really pushing to have an update on that for this advisory group meeting, and people said it just wasn't far enough along, but maybe that's an item for the agenda come the January meeting. So that's the ability to submit your application for renewal, even your initial application with all the fees online. Any, Gene? Gene has changed positions and is no longer on the advisory group as a result, but gone but not forgotten, definitely. And welcome back.
Thank you. Gene Lopez with Siders Collision Center. So I just thought I'd bring up a fresh topic in the collision industry. It has to do with pre and post scanning of vehicles. For the automotive technicians and mechanics in the room, you're real familiar with scanning a vehicle. From a collision side, we have now 4 OEMs that are requiring or recommending a pre and a post scan. A pre-scan to determine if there's any diagnostic trouble codes that are currently on the vehicle before we touch it. As soon as we begin disassembly, we will automatically receive some of these DTCs. And in so, we then don't know if it was part of our disassembly process or if the trouble codes coming up were part of the collision or if they're historical trouble codes. So we have some concern about that, and the concern is how are we going to translate this back to the consumer? So with the 4 OEMs who are Fiat Chrysler, Toyota, Honda, and Nissan, they have published statements or position statements on pre and post scanning. We have concerns about what tool do we use, right? We have OE scan tools that come directly from the manufacturer, very expensive. I don't know exactly what the cost is, but probably well over $10,000. I found one aftermarket scan tool, their high-end scan tool, $10,000. It seems in my research that the average scan tool, $2,000, $4,500, depending on what type of information you want to receive from that vehicle. And so we have these OE scan tools, and we have the aftermarket scan tools, and now we have some third-party companies that will, via a modem, connect your vehicle to their scan tools in Texas or in Florida, scan the vehicle, depending on what type of Wi-Fi rate you have, it could take just a few minutes or it could take a half an hour to scan a vehicle. So we have a technician either going back and doing some other operation or waiting a half an hour, 30 minutes to receive the information from this third party, which you would expect the third party is going to have a higher than average cost to scan the vehicle. Somewhere around, the cost to the shop is somewhere around $90 for the pre-scan and about $180 for the post-scan, which drives the severity of that repair to well over $200. Not something that a competitive repairer would want his insurance partner, if you will, to have to receive in the cost of repair. When we have an average severity rate of somewhere around $2,500, if you bump that up a couple $100 and you're measured on severity, the opportunity for you to drop a tier because your severity is too high from an insurer is very likely. So we have a concern about that. It's not a consumer concern until we bring it to the consumer and ask the consumer about the scanning operation, pre-scan, post-scan. Your particular insurer in our DRP environment or direct repair program environment will not pay for discovery of a diagnostic trouble code. Therefore, you have three options. You can pay for it, or ask your insurer to pay for it, or we won't perform the diagnostic scan. Three options to the consumer. So we have a concern over who's paying for it. And we also have a concern from a consumer standpoint around historical data. Customer comes in, we scan their vehicle, and we learn that there's been an airbag on for several months, maybe over a year, and now who's going to pay for that repair? It wasn't part of the collision, but it's showing up like a collision damage. So there's some freeze frame information, and there's also some time-lapse information on these scan tools that a repairer can't really diagnose. We don't know when it may have happened. So whether it's historical data or it's current data, it's a concern for us to relay back to the consumer. So I bring this up because I think it's important enough to know today that there could be future consumer complaints, and that's when it's going to hit your desk. Questions, comments?
Jason?
Yeah, and then in addition to the pre and post scan, from a consumer standpoint, certainly is the post-repair calibration and aiming of many of these advanced driver assist systems, whether it's adaptive cruise control, lane keep, lane departure warning. That is an area where you may be replacing, just removing and installing a camera or a sensor to replace glass or aligning the vehicle itself. If those calibrations or aiming procedures are not done, those systems may not work, and we may be putting that consumer in harm's way potentially. So I think that's another area from a consumer standpoint where we may see some issues arise of these systems not functioning properly following collision repairs, even if that system itself wasn't damaged due to the other repairs that we're doing to adjacent areas or those mounting locations of those vehicles.
Comments?
It's good to see you all again. Thanks for your time. Oh, thanks, Tracy.
Okay, I might have missed this. So it's the insurance companies that are requiring this information from you?
No, it's the
From
vehicle manufacturers. The vehicle manufacturers, Honda, Toyota, Nissan,
Right.
Fiat Chrysler, they've delivered position statements stating that a pre and a post scan, after a vehicle's been in any type of collision,
Right.
that they get scanned.
Okay, so obviously I don't do auto collision. Does the insurance company, for instance, do they scan the vehicles prior, like when the adjuster comes out? Do they do all of that as well?
Currently, no. And some are taking a position on that the vehicle wasn't insured for a discovery operation. It's not part of the policy to discover something that may be wrong with the vehicle. And so some insurers are taking that position. We're not going to pay for a pre-scan. If you determine at the end of the repair that there are some diagnostic trouble codes, well, then you can add a supplement to the repair at that point.
And how are they wanting you to address, car comes in and the battery, the whole thing was damaged and you can't access anything?
Well, so you're saying if a vehicle is damaged in so much it has no power to perform that scan, then we would certainly have to provide, a battery setup, if you will, to perform the scan. And in many cases, if it's that damaged, we'll probably lean toward a total loss at that point.
Anecdotally, some of the data that we've been given was that only 20 to 30% of the vehicles are at that point where you can't scan it because the power is not there. The majority of the time, the vehicle does have power, but it may not have sufficient power. But the best practice that we've been working on with the industry dictates that as soon as that vehicle has power and it's safe to do the scan, that it should be done at that point.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Gene, for the heads up about some of those changes going on in the industry. That's something we'll have to alert our offices about. Other comments for anything that wasn't on the agenda? John?
Just another reminder, you and I had talked about maybe having Alan Morrison here for the January meeting on Department of Toxic Substance.
Right, we've secured him for the January meeting, yes.
Right, thank you.
Yeah. Don't go too far. He's on that issue too?
Gene Lopez again from Sidner's Collision Center. Yeah, we all need to be good stewards of our environment, right? And there is a lot that what we're doing and certainly in collision repair as well as automotive repair that we may not be aware of because of years of handling our waste as waste to a landfill when it should be handled as a hazardous waste that needs to be determined of where its grade will be at. So yeah, thank you for bringing that up, and I look forward to that discussion.
Thank you. Any other comments of items not on the agenda? Okay. Our next meeting will be Thursday, January 19th, 2017. Do we know whether we have this room or headquarters 2? Headquarters 1. We'll also look to attach a regulatory workshop if there's one that's timing-wise needs a workshop. We'll definitely do that. That's always been our preferences to include a workshop on the tail end of an advisory group meeting with people from out of town being in town, getting your attention at those workshops on the same day as the advisory group meeting is, I think, our preferred method of kind of getting everybody involved on an issue. And to repeat, our 2 workshops that we've got scheduled today, also in the same room, will be the Bar 97 specification update, the proposed changes for that. That'll be from 2 to 3 in this room, also webcast. And then from 3 to 4, we'll have our second of the 2 workshops on the changes to and updates to the the brake and lamp handbooks and inspection procedures for the brake and lamp programs. All right. Thank you. One final thing, I just want to say my kid became an Eagle Scout yesterday. I'm so damn proud of him. I can't believe it. I never did it, so I was too chicken to even go and wasn't exposed to it at my as a kid. But 10 years just working on this stuff, and it finally came to an end when he went to the Board of Review yesterday. And I'm so proud of him. So, Cameron, great job. All right, thank you. We're adjourned for today.